Good evening. Welcome to the Wendell Town Board of Commissioners meeting. We're happy to have all of you here tonight. We're going to be led in the Pledge of Allegiance by Wendell Girl Scout Troop 3307. If y'all can come to the podium. And we have tonight Kaylee Flowers, Minnie Campbell, and Tori Mitchell. Stand on the other side of it so that you're facing the microphone. Okay, get ready.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, ladies. For our invocation tonight from the Wendell Council of Churches, we're going to hear from Pastor Barry McFarland of the New Hope Missionary Baptist Church. Is he here? All right, Errol Briggerman. What would we do without you? I received that email as well, but that's okay. Things come up.
Just to make some announcements, like always. Most of the schools have started. Our little preschool at Wendell Baptist starts the Tuesday after Labor Day. And I think I mentioned this the other day, we now have 18-month-olds. We have 10 little kids in that, little children in that one, and a waiting list and a regular. So it's, yeah, the town, the community is really starting to grow up. Some of our churches, they're seeing a great return to the pews. So, yeah, it's all good. Let's pray. Lord, thank you for this wonderful day you've given us. Thank you, Lord, how you watch over the community. Thank you, Lord, for our commissioners, for the decisions they have to make. We just pray, Lord, they all honor you, and we know that you have. We pray for the community to grow and grow in such a terrific way that it honors you as well. Lord, for all those things we ask in your blessed name. Amen.
Thank you, Errol. Errol's our backup plan, but he's really more than that, and we appreciate him. Thank you, Errol. Are there any adjustments to the agenda?
Mayor, if we could remove item 4B.
All right, we're going to remove item 4B. Take that up another time. So do we have a motion to approve without item 4B?
Move.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, we move into our public comment period. The public can participate in public comment by signing up for public comment on the night of the meeting, and you have 3 minutes to speak, or you can submit written statements to the town clerk by the Friday before our meeting, which is always on Monday, typically by 5 o'clock, and it will be read into the record for 3 minutes. We have 2 people signed up tonight. The first is Anthony Benjamin. Good evening.
Good evening, ma'am.
Give me your name and address for the record, please,
Yes,
sir.
Anthony Benjamin, 256 Long Deer Drive. I want to thank all of you for your supports in building this community. This community is up and growing. My family and I, we're newly moved here a couple of months ago, and, you know, I love it. One of the things I got involved in is coaching at the community center, basketball. I don't know what's going on. You know, I'm new to the area, but some of the concerns that some of the parents had as I was coaching was the basketball court. There's a lot of dead spots on the basketball court, in particular under the rim, and potentially could be, you know, a safety hazard. You know, when kids go up, come down, blow out an ACL or something like that. And we definitely don't want to see that. So I just would like to just say, if right now I know money is an issue everywhere and you guys are doing the best you can, but if we can kind of do some preventive maintenance into getting some bids and seeing what needs to be done to kind of level things out, that'd be a great help. You know, I love coaching over there. You know, I have a good relationship with Tim over there. And, you know, I love the kids, doing it for the kids, because they're enthusiastic and they're, you know, fun. And a lot of times we look and they're having a good time, but we also want to make sure that they're safe. So that's all, I wanted to say. If you guys could take that in consideration, it'd be greatly appreciated. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Welcome to Wendell. We're happy to have you. And thank you for working at the Parks and Rec and volunteering your time. The next one is Dare Robertson. Good evening, ma'am. Give us your name and address.
My name is Dare Robertson, 5948 Cooper's Hawk Trail here in Wendell. So I am here tonight as a concerned homeowner for Edgemont Landing. I'm really concerned about the safety of our kids there, as well as myself and the fellow homeowners. Our neighborhood, our streets have been joked as a game of Tetris, a game of bob and weave. And it's really become a safety hazard with the amount of parking on the streets. Speed has become a huge problem in our neighborhood. I know that many people have relied on our local law enforcement, who have been phenomenal with responding to calls of speeding through the neighborhood, especially down Osprey Landing. And stop signs are being completely disregarded. I mean, they're an option at this point in Edgemont Landing, and so we need your help. We are asking for you guys to consider helping us with some of the issues we're having. We are watching vehicles struggle to get down the street. We're watching trash cans every Tuesday morning nearly sideswipe vehicles. I know I stand out there and see it. It really became apparent to me not that long ago when I almost hit a child myself. Something that none of us would ever forgive ourselves for. But this is an example of what I'm talking about. So as you can see, there's a driveway, and in that on the street there, you've got vehicles on both sides. So as I'm traveling down the road, I don't see a child run out into the street. Had those vehicles not been there, my visibility would have been that driveway. I would have seen the child running out of the street. I didn't see him until he was inches in front of my car. We need your help. We have done everything that we can do. It's not guest parking. It's residents choosing to not park in their driveway. It's choosing to use the roadway. On 4 occasions in the last 12 months, I haven't even been able to drive down my own street to get to my own house. I've had to back up, reroute, and go a different way. And I can only imagine if my tiny car can't get down the road, can an emergency vehicle? Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Moved.
All right, we have a motion to approve. All in favor?
Aye.
Going to move into our recognitions, reports, and presentations. Item 4A is the downtown facade grant presentation. Matt Garner. Good evening.
Good evening. As a result of some feedback from the board, we're doing this presentation to try to get feedback on the direction we would like the facade grant program to go in the future. You should have received the current policy, and I have a copy of it in case anybody has any questions as to what is currently in place. Just a little bit of background about where we are as a facade grant program. It's existed since 2002. It's been updated essentially every 3 years since 2013. We have good information and records going back till 2012. And in that time period, we've done 24 awarded and dispersed grants. There have been some more that have been approved but not paid out because the work either wasn't completed or wasn't attempted. And all of that totals up to approximately $70,000 in grants, which doesn't include $40,000 for from the Department of Commerce for one specific project. And then as a summary of the current program, there's a $5,000 maximum award per facade. Multiple facades can be approved within the same building if there are separate tenants. There is a minimum of 2 years between grant applications. It is limited to the downtown mixed-use zoning in the downtown area. Eligible uses include lighting, awnings, paint, doors, transom windows, masonry, gutters, downspouts, handicap improvements, and also electrical relocation, which is not listed there. So we've talked as staff about changes to the facade grant program, and we've kind of envisioned this presentation and sort of the flow of the questions and answers in this general structure. So the very top level question, as you heard last time we had a presentation like this on the RFP, is do we need a facade grant program at all? If the answer is no, then obviously the rest of the flow chart is kind of irrelevant. If the answer is yes, and I would like to point out that every municipality in Wake County has a facade grant program, with the exception of Knightdale, and a facade grant program is in Knightdale's strategic plan, excuse me. So if we need a facade grant and we're going to update it, the first thing to look at is general eligibility and administrative provisions, really basic, just sort of administrative stuff that's irrelevant to the actual implementation of the grant. Then you kind of have two choices when you move down that ladder. Are we taking a value-based approach in determining eligibility, or use-based approach? And I'm going to explain what both of those are in a minute. If you choose a value-based approach, what are the values we're looking to incentivize, and what are the uses within those values that we're willing to incentivize? As a use-based approach is more like what we have now, where there's a series of uses that are eligible. If we want to tweak that list, it's just a matter of deciding what the uses are, and do all of them receive equal funding? Are there tiers of funding? Things like that. So for the first course of action, potentially a value-based approach is attaching the facade grant eligibility to projects that meet identified goals and values. So what is the mission statement? What is the value of the project we are looking to incentivize? Potential values that the board could have, or is coordination with a bug grant for new restaurants. So if someone is already expending money and receiving a building upfront grant for a new commercial kitchen, should they also be eligible for a facade grant? Are they looking to open up a second floor office or residential in an area that currently doesn't have it? Is that an important value and worth being incentivized? Is historic preservation a value that is worth being incentivized specifically? Or are there other values that the board may have that aren't on this list? And then within these values, you still have to make the determination, are the current list of eligible uses still the ones we're looking to incentivize? Is paint and awnings things we're looking to incentivize? Or are we looking for more structural improvements? Or because we're tying the money to these values that we're looking to push forward downtown, do we not care specifically what the uses are as long as they're spent in that sort of goal? And then you have to ask yourself, is $5,000 still the sort of a maximum amount we're looking for? Or are we looking towards maybe a tiered approach? For example, the town of Apex's facade grant program has different levels of funding depending on what improvements you're making. So for things like paint or awnings, $2,000 is the maximum. When you move towards more structural things, you get into $7,500 or $10,000 grant amounts. So an approach like that may be able to sort of weigh the uses, even if we're not excluding any of the current uses that are in the eligibility. On the other side of the coin, a use-based approach is simply a modification of the eligible uses that the facade grant can be used for. So what uses are we willing to incentivize? Which uses do we not want to incentivize any longer? Again, there's the list of the currently eligible uses within the program. And then similar to the last slide, do all these uses bear equal weight? Do we have a tiered system? Do we have design standards? So if we want to include paint in the allowable uses, do we care what color paint it is? Things of that nature. So all of that to say, this is your opportunity to provide staff direction and feedback on all the things we've talked about before, and this is just a current little summary. So does the facade grant need to exist? Is a value approach or a use-based approach or a combination of the two what we're looking to do? Within those sort of approaches, which uses are we looking to incentivize? Just sort of generally speaking, the current grant is limited to the DMX. If you wanted to limit it to just the historic district, the left slide has the zoning map for downtown. The red area is the DMX zone. On the right is the historic preservation district downtown. So you can see the differences in scale there. Or are you looking to expand beyond just the red? And then what should be the grant amounts? Do we need tiers? Do we need more money, less money, no money? All of those things are obviously up for consideration.
All right, are there any comments from the board?
Happy to kick us off. I know I've talked about this plenty in the past.
Yeah, we'll let you go.
I'll take down your bullet points. Yes, I think the facade grant needs to exist. I don't think the distinction between value and use-based approaches, so I'll skip that one for right now. Sorry about that. I care less about any particular use being allowed. I mean, I think basically it needs to be something structural. I'm not opposed to any of the current uses necessarily. But I think what I really care about the most is the maybe it's the third bullet, is just that we follow the Secretary of the Interior standards for historic preservation. And I don't say that to mean that I think we need to restrict it to just the National Register Historic District. That's the right-hand side part of this slide. I think you can apply those standards to buildings that are not listed on the National Register. But I think that would then influence whether an awning on a particular property would be appropriate, because it would have to do with the historical integrity of the building, which is all connected to the standards, the color. I'm not here to regulate colors of buildings, but there are certain things within the Secretary of the Interior standards for historic preservation that would speak to some of that. So that, I think it ought to exist. I think we ought to follow the Secretary of the Interior standards for historic preservation. And that's really, I think, as far as my opinion's about to go. I think that covers most all the questions.
Thank you.
Except the amounts. I'm happy with the current amount, but if we want to do more, I'm happy for more, as long as we're following those standards. And if we want to go beyond the DMX, I'm not opposed to that, as long as we're following those standards.
I'm not familiar with the Secretary of Interior standards, so I'd like to see that. But I would hate to, if someone wanted to put an awning there, there might be a reason to block the sun. It might really be needed. On some of the sides of the street, it's really bakes in. So there might be a purpose for that. And I would hate to just say that if it just said, no, you cannot do that. So I'd like to know more about that and how that is reached. But that would be my only question, my only thing about that, but so far. Anyone else have any? Yes.
Matt, you may have mentioned this earlier, with applying for the grant. Is it only when ownership of a building or changes?
No, so the 2-year window goes away when the ownership changes, but all buildings are eligible at any time as long as they haven't received a grant in the last 2 years.
Only thing I would say with this too is just that as someone who received the grant and very much appreciated it, I don't see the point. I don't see the reason to ever reward somebody, even reward myself a grant. I'll use myself as an example for repainting my building, I guess is the point. And you know, no matter if you do little updates or fixes, I think if a building has kind of been brought up to a good standard, I don't know if continuing to feed that business grants. And if you've already addressed that and that's built in, that's just a concern I would have, to keep giving taxpayer money over to a business who just wants to do a facelift.
Sure. So would you prefer a sort of longer than 2-year period?
I would be certainly okay with that. I always thought that if you had a longer period, you know, with the kind of caveat if something changed owners, if it was repurchased. When we first kind of, I feel like, discussed this years ago, I think a lot of it was to get rid of awnings and to you know, make the outsides look a little nicer. And so I think a lot of the buildings have gotten there. And so the benefit for the facade grant to me is not non-existent, but it's fading a little bit. I think a lot of buildings are taking advantage of that. So I would still be very much opposed or in favor of, you know, longer time periods between receiving the grant. Like I said, unless something changed owners or purpose.
Maybe even eliminate the same, you know, if somebody's asking for paint and awning, 2 years from now, somebody else comes along and they want to do paint and awning, maybe we eliminate that, because
The same reason.
we just did paint and awning.
I think I may have a way to split the difference a little bit between what we're talking about, and y'all may or may not like it. One of the things I'd like to see is more information, more data on the outcomes. And I think in order to be able to measure outcomes, we have to have two things. One, a plan for the outcome, and two, actually measuring it. So a plan for the outcome would be as a part of the application process, how you plan to, now that you've done this upgrade, what your plan is moving forward to maintain that upgrade. For instance, like windows, what you're gonna, and it could be a line that is as simple as, we're gonna check the windows every year to make sure they're not rotting. But a maintenance plan moving forward. And I think that would also allow us to not limit it on a property or change of hands, but actually by uses. I wrestled with, after we talked about it last time, I rode by and looked at the East Wake's, there's some awnings in town that need to be replaced, and there's some awnings in town that have been replaced and they look a lot better. That said, I don't want to buy your awning again in 8 years. But I do, if me helping you gets you to paint the building and put an awning on it and fix the windows, I'm happy to help you do all three of those 3 separate times. And that would be my, one additional piece is if we know the information we're getting, and we've broken it out a little bit, incentivizing things like Commissioner Eatman's talking about. So if you are doing it at a level that is, the Department of Interior standards, or to the tax credit standards is what I've always referred to them as. If you're doing it to that level, incentivize that. So maybe you would be able to get $5,000 under the normal program, but if you come under the normal program and you're willing to do it at the historic preservation level, we're willing to meet you with more money, theoretically, because the community, by you going through that process, is getting more return long-term, if that makes sense. And those are my, I think, 3 big thoughts.
So one way that some communities address your first point about the maintenance is that, especially for higher tiered grants amounts. So for instance, again, in Apex's facade grant program, the highest tier, there's a 3-year sort of clawback provision included with the grant. So that may meet sort of the at least 3-year sort of time window of maintenance, if that's something that people were interested in, as opposed to just categorically checking every year to see if they're keeping up with or at least from the outset, having them provide a plan that they may or may not follow.
No, that's fine. My thought with the plan would be, if it ever came back, it may be an adaptive reuse, right? So we may need to tear out that perfectly good historic window that we just put there 3 years ago because, I don't know, Cracker Barrel is coming to Main Street. And we just need, like, it's gonna happen, it's finally here. And so maybe a very good reason for the same thing to be done on a building. And I appreciated the mayor's comments last time about East Wake. And I was trying to find a way that you could do the same thing. It could just be qualified differently.
You know, you just set Facebook on fire about Cracker Barrel, right? Okay.
Will you talk through the tiered system again?
Sure. So some communities, for instance, the town of Apex, there's a tiered system of grant maximum amounts. So it doesn't mean you always receive the maximum amount, but the matching portion of it has a cap that changes depending on the investment you're making in the building. So for just paint or just awnings, the town of Apex will match up to $2,000. For masonry repair, for new windows, the town will match up to $7,500. For more substantial improvements to the building, or for historic preservation purposes, they'll match up to $10,000. So you can call it a tier, you can call it levels, you can call it 3 different programs if you want to. There's slightly different requirements for each of them beyond just the literal eligibility of like what uses there are. For instance, the highest tier, like I said, has clawback provisions. So the grant is structured somewhat differently, whereas the 2001, like it doesn't require the same number of quotes because it's a smaller investment. And if you're getting paint, the significance of multiple quotes may not be as necessary.
I'm assuming that they do that to encourage more substantial investments. That would be my thinking. And part of my thought process, I mean, I think it's great that we do, you know, $5,000 on $10,000, $15,000. But if we've done, I think it said $70,000 over time, wouldn't it be great if we had somebody that would bring substantial money into downtown that we could then offer them substantial grant money?
Right. And
Is
so,
and what I mean is, you know, is it better to do 10 $3,500 projects, or is it better to do one $35,000 project?
so I would say two responses to that. Over the course of the last 11 years of data we have, the average grant amount is less than $2,000, even with a $5,000 cap or previously a $10,000 cap on the matching fund. So these are major and majority pretty small projects with a few exceptions. One of the things we mentioned, or I meant to mention, excuse me, in the value-based approach, when I was talking about in conjunction with a building upfit grant, if it was the board's will to just put all of the downtown grants into one big pot of money, then you could talk about matching a more substantial amount of investment for specific types of projects. But caps, whatever they are at the board's pleasure.
And is it because we encourage smaller projects? I know we say we want all the grand projects, but do we really have people that are coming to downtown that are taking advantage of that? Or is it just somebody here that wants, you know, hey, paint, awning, whatever?
I'm sure it's a little of both. I haven't been around for every single facade grant. The ones recently have been of more sizable investment. I mean, some of that is just the cost of construction now. But we would like to encourage as much investment as private investment is willing to bear, for sure.
So I think, in speaking on that, I would be in favor of a tiered system to encourage larger investments.
So does that include like interior sprinkler systems, upgrading like kitchen, commercial kitchens, things like that?
So the bug grant that y'all passed last year includes all of that.
Does it include like,
And
just wanna
this,
make sure.
the facade grant's just for exterior improvements.
So they do a big commercial kitchen and
Right.
sprinkler systems, you have more people in the building for functions.
Yes, sir.
I recall at one of our budget meetings discussing and I think the town manager said that should we have a large, big project come about, that we could talk about how we could create a grant for that opportunity, that we wouldn't let an opportunity like that get away, that we would do, you know, we're not gonna just let that go away, but it may be that if we developed a system where we had that, people would, I don't know, maybe they'd see it on the front end and they'd be more likely to take advantage of it than us just go, oh, by the way, you know, if it would be more official.
Even if it says greater than this amount, please inquire, you know,
Yeah.
anything.
I do think that town staff has been mentioning it when they thought it might be of value, but I think that honestly, the spaces down there are small, and I think we've definitely gotten a huge bang for our buck for the $70,000 that's been spent. So I do think that, and I think it's great that we've grown to the point that we need to think about nuancing it a little bit. It's exciting. All right, so does anyone else have anything they want to add? Do you have everything you need?
Yes, ma'am. And I will send out the Secretary of Interior standards to everyone, just so you guys
Okay.
all can see them.
Okay. I think one thing about those colors for that, if there are colors, would maybe be that if a business did change uses, it wouldn't be so apt to need to be repainted. The color wouldn't be so branded to that business. And that would be a good thing too, because of the concern about paying and then paying again.
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move to item 4C, the Town of Wendell 2023 bond referendum presentation. I'm going to hear from our town manager, Mark Collins.
All right, exciting times. Staff is here to present a bond referendum presentation that we're looking forward to going out on our traveling roadshow to civic groups, church groups, gatherings of more than a few people that are just loitering on a corner may get this presentation. who's ever asking for it between now and the election, we're glad to come provide facts regarding the upcoming bond referendum voted on by the board unanimously at your last meeting. So let's take a look at it. You have your new bond referendum seal at the top. We'll have a voter referendum at the municipal election on November 7th, 2023, for our 2023 bond referendum. This is, to my knowledge, the first municipal bond referendum and general obligation bond referendum for the town of Wendell. And on that referendum, there'll be two general obligation bonds proposed, so two questions. The board adopted the resolution and put forward the two questions. The first bond is for $38 million, is proposed for Parks and Recreation facilities. Mr. Benjamin will like that part of the presentation shortly. And a second bond order for $12 million proposed for transportation improvements. I'm sure lots of commuters in the morning will like that one. That's a value statement, but my apologies, I'm got to get that out of my system. Make your voice heard. Citizens can vote at the November 7th municipal election ballot. Both the questions are approved. The town would be authorized to issue up to $50 million in general obligation bonds. That does not mean that the town has to issue $50 million, but we'd be authorized to. The two bond categories, as I mentioned, are Parks and Recreation and a Transportation Improvement Bond. All right, that was corrected upstairs, but not conveyed down here. The debt issued by state, what is a general obligation bond? It's debt issued by state, local governments, and other local government entities such as school district. It's the most fiscally responsible way for the town to obtain financing for capital projects over long term. Fiscally responsible means lower rate over that time period. So if we had to go out and obtain the same amount of funding to do that capital project in another manner, it would cost more to the taxpayer. This also allows, these are typically longer tenured infrastructure and facility projects, which means that the user groups that are paying for that debt over time are the same ones that are enjoying the benefit. So your town residents are enjoying that benefit over the time. And of course, bonds must be repaid. What has been discussed for the bonds at this point for Parks and Recreation, the $38 million, funding would be used to acquire, construct, improve, and expand parks, greenways, and recreational facilities. One of those that was discussed, a concept plan is shown here, was done in conversation with Football Club of North Carolina and Wendell Rams and Cheer, which would include a new football field, new multi-use field that's a practice field, and 3 artificial surface soccer lacrosse fields, so a total of 5 fields. The town has received additional funding authorized through tourism funds from Wake County that would go towards this project. So this would be providing town funding for that project and land acquisition. I can also say on that, the town currently has one multi-purpose field over through the rain and across the field there that's been prepared. So as our town grows, our Parks and Recreation Master Plan identifies that there are a number of these fields that are needed throughout our jurisdiction. And so this is an investment in implementing that Parks and Recreation Master Plan for what's needed. In addition to the partnership, the complex will serve as a new home for those partners, include a lighted football field, which includes practice field, concessions, restrooms, field house, and equipment storage, typical with those uses. A neat thing about this site is it provides accessibility back to Wendell Park and the Buffalo Creek Greenway, which is being designed at this time. Second one, Mr. Benjamin. New recreation center. What was priced out would include 3 new indoor courts. It would be fully ADA accessible, or the facility would be ADA accessible, include multiple basketball and volleyball courts, program spaces, exercise space, and staff offices. Our current facility is dated. It was identified in the ADA transition plan as having numerous needs, and there are costs associated with that. Much like our town hall, looking at building a new facility that expands to meet what our Parks and Recreation Master Plan needs and resolves those ADA transition plans requirement is the preferred solution set. That's a large portion. Those are expensive facilities in current environment and would definitely require some form of borrowing, much like a bond, to fund in any case. In addition, there are 2 greenway projects that currently are under design, and so this would fund the first 2 greenway projects for the town of Wendell. The first one we talk about is Buffalo Creek. That's connecting a Main Street greenway in the downtown area. Eventually, it will be built all the way out to Wake County's Robertson Mill Pond Preserve. It would also connect to Carver Elementary School, East Wake High School, Wake Tech, and the new Wake Tech campus. It's approximately a 4-mile greenway when constructed. The first phase that's going beyond concept to construction design right now goes from Wendell Falls Parkway to what would be the athletic field complex property. That would be phase 1 on the existing town property, and would also include a trailhead with ADA accessible parking and trail that would go down to that from across from the dog park in the unimproved parking area right now. That would also provide additional ADA accessible trails and seating spaces along our fields in that area too, to make them accessible. Main Street Greenway provides approximately a little over half, but 2/3 maybe a mile, 12-foot paved trail. It's unimproved Main Street right of way that will now be a greenway instead of a road. This connects a lot of neighborhoods to our south of downtown, back up to downtown. It also connects downtown close to the Buffalo Creek area, which then the Buffalo Creek Trail would continue on out. This also connects over to Wendell Falls Parkway and would connect to the multi-use path along Wendell Falls Parkway, which connects that community back into downtown as well. So this is the first town-built phase of that project to connect downtown to Wendell Falls. That's under design. That first section is under design now and will be ready for construction by the end of the fiscal year. Moving over to the transportation bond question, up to $12 million, used to acquire, construct, extend, widen, resurface, install, and improve streets and sidewalks and other general transportation improvements. Much like Parks and Recreation, the town has an adopted transportation plan. The board realizes that probably the #1 place that citizens stand here and talk to you about is the intersection of Wendell Falls Parkway and Eagle Rock Road intersection project. Transportation plan calls for this to be 2 4-lane roads at that intersection with associated turn lanes. That's under design currently, and so this will provide funding for the town's portion of that improvement. Looking at other potential projects beyond that first main one would be to provide town portions of funding We would be matching with developer funds and grant funds, DOT funds, to achieve other outcomes. There are road widening projects in the transportation plan. Wendell Falls Parkway has a 4-lane cross-section from where it ends out near Wendell Falls now to Jake May Road. Not all of that will be built by developers, and the town needs to set forward funding to do its share of those projects. Additionally, Eagle Rock Road and Wendell Boulevard have sections that need improvement over time as well. Bike and pedestrian improvements, if you look at existing older collector roads like a Hollybrook Road that currently have a ditch and swell and no sidewalks and no places for bicycles to safely navigate, that's a major corridor connecting a lot of neighborhoods back into downtown from the south side of town. Similarly, on 3rd Street going out towards the Pleasant Grove community, there's gaps in service. When you even look in some of the older new sections like the Big Falls Drive or Taylor Road in Wendell Falls, these are collector roads that may have sidewalks on the side, but they're designed as wide and don't have bicycle or other features built in that could be added in with the neighborhood plan moving forward. Other intersection improvements like the intersection of Eagle Rock Road and Wendell Boulevard may require some town funds to be achieved also. So the funding provides the matching funds of the town to have the opportunities to make the improvements identified in the transportation plan that we don't currently have. And the board and future boards would decide over the next 7 years of how much is going towards which projects and the bond issuance for that time. All right. So there's the cost, there's the benefit of what's needed, there's the cost of what's needed. So currently our tax rate is 47 cents per $100 of taxable value. In FY 2024, 1 cent of property tax generates approximately $138,298. If the bond referendum is adopted and everything is moved out as the schedule that the financial advisor put forward, and the whole tax rate was charged at one time based on a safe harbor estimate of the Local Government Commission, which is a very fiscally conservative, high estimate of rate, then that would be a 6.9 cent. So 6.9 times the 138 with assumptions for each of those years to pay off the debt over the time of the debt. This can change. The whole amount's not borrowed at one time. The whole tax doesn't have to be put on one time. Property values can go up. They can go down. That impacts how much money is collected for each penny of tax rate, and that means less might be needed or more might be needed. For interest rates, as we've seen the last couple of years, they can go up and they can go down and they can go back up again. So when we borrow at what rate affects the rate that you have to pay or how much you have to pay in interest. And that can impact how many cents are used. And so therefore the timing of the borrowing can also impact that amount. All right, so using that 6.9 for a Wendell resident that owns the average home value in Wendell of $238,932, that comes out to $165 a year or $13.75 monthly. And so there's a value proposition for voters of are the benefits worth the cost? If you look at where our costs are comparative to our other Wake County jurisdictions, you can see on this comparison, our average home value is on the lower end. This is all weighted based on the total on the right. And what this shows is average home value, property tax rate, how much you pay in annual property taxes, your annual solid waste fee, annual water and sewer charges, annual stormwater fee. So if you look at what you actually get for the amount that you pay, you see that we're in the value side of the middle part of the grouping. With the additional 6.9, so Wendell with the bond, that moves us down a couple points below Raleigh and Cary where they currently are. But we're still in that middle, just on the other side of the middle part of the grouping. So there's not what people get compared to the other jurisdictions for what they pay is still a value in Wendell, and we'd have these additional services in place. Any questions on this one? All right. And we end with voter information. So early voting begins on October 24th. Election day is November 7th, 2023. And if you would like more information about the 2023 bond referendum, we have a town website, town page on our town website that provides this information. And this evening, this PowerPoint presentation will be on there as well that the public can download, and I'll provide hard copies to the board as needed. If you have just any questions about elections in general, Wake County, it's a Wake County department, not the town that handles elections, and their information is there as well. As we move forward to the bond and we have questions asked and we can provide more data, we'll add more data to that website as we move forward. Is there any questions by the board tonight?
Any questions from the board?
Yeah. All right.
All right, we'll move into our public hearings. Item 5A is an evidentiary hearing on a special use permit request by Sean and Sarah Armstrong of Armstrong Performance to allow recreation facilities indoor at 11 East 3rd Street. Ms. Griffin? First thing we need to do is have our town attorney review the rules for evidentiary hearings, please.
Yes, Madam Mayor, this is, as you point out, an evidentiary hearing as opposed to a legislative process. What that means is that you sit as judges, much like judges in a court of law. You hear the evidence and decide whether that evidence satisfies the findings that are contained in the town code. Evidence is sworn, so witnesses will be sworn to testify. The statute requires that it be competent, substantial, and material evidence, and that certain types of evidence are required to be presented only by experts, just similar to a court of law. Some folks have to have expert credentials to testify about certain subjects. For example, property valuation information, engineering matters like stormwater, traffic, things of that nature. So that's the process, a little different than your typical legislative process.
Thank you. Anyone here that is going to speak tonight and give any kind of information or testimony, if you can step forward and be sworn by the clerk?
Or if you think there's a chance you're going to say anything.
If you think there's the slightest possibility.
You can,
Okay.
do you swear that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
All right, we'll open the evidentiary hearing and hear from town staff. Ms. Griffin.
Good evening. Again, tonight you do have before you Special Use Permit 2302. This is a request by Sean and Sarah Armstrong of Armstrong Performance to allow for recreation facilities indoor at 11 East 3rd Street. Recreation facilities indoor means uses or structures for active recreation. You see some included uses there that are indoors. This is inclusive of both nonprofit and for-profit operations. The application in this case states this will be a sports performance facility, predominantly baseball, with batting cages, weight room, recovery stations, sports camps, track out camps, and team practices. UDO Section 3.3 lists the following standards for recreation facilities indoor. You'll see that there is one. Since this is an existing building and no expansion is requested and planned, this standard does not apply at this time. The proposed development is in a predominantly retail area with Campin Road directly to the east. Groomer Ruth and Perry's are on the east side of the alley. There's a vacant building directly to the west with Simply Blush and retail to the west of that vacant building. The retail buildings are owned by Shalimar Holdings, which also owns the property in question tonight at 11 East 3rd Street. One of those retail buildings extends behind the subject property, and Bearded Bee is just north of that building. There are retail businesses across the street from the subject property. For special use criteria, the evaluation and approval of the SUP shall be governed by the quasi-judicial proceedings, as was stated earlier. Those are based on sworn testimony and considering the following standards, such as the proposed use does not adversely affect the general plans for the town, or is not contrary to the purposes stated for the regulations of the UDO, will not adversely affect health and safety of residents or workers in town, will not be detrimental to the use of the development of adjacent properties or other neighborhood uses. The proposed use will not be affected adversely by existing uses, and the proposed use will be placed on a lot of sufficient size to satisfy the space requirements of that use. And again, this is going in an existing building. The proposed use will not constitute a nuisance. The standards set forth for the use for which the permit may be granted have been met. The board may impose additional restrictions or conditions as may be necessary to protect health and safety. Proposed use is subject to the minimum area and setback, and the proposed use shall be subject to the off-street parking requirements. The DMX, as you see there, and with the subject parcel highlighted, it does allow for recreation facilities indoor with a special use permit. Like most downtown properties, the business will utilize public parking lots and on-street parking. There are 2 municipal parking lots within 2 blocks in each direction. The building is already connected to water and sewer. Blueprint Wendell 2030 classifies this area as downtown core. Downtown core does list commercial uses such as retail and restaurants and event spaces as appropriate uses for this area. The applicant did hold a neighborhood meeting as required. That meeting was on August the 4th and was held virtually with no one signing into the meeting. Town of Wendell staff presents the staff analysis but does not make a recommendation on special use permits. You see the legal advertisement is required by law and when they were published before you in the Wake Weekly, as well as adjacent property owner notifications and a public hearing sign. The applicant has expressed the desire to place a film or wrap over the windows that would block most light from entering the building. The town's UDO allows for up to 35% window coverage in the DMX, and the applicant would like to completely cover the window. So staff has developed a condition for your consideration that you'll see there. If you do make a motion to grant the special use permit, we would ask that you put the following conditions on there. All applicable building permits, laws, and codes are obtained or maintained. And then the second one for your consideration is the subject business will be allowed to use a film or wrap over the windows to block light. Once the business ceases to operate, the film or wrap will be completely removed within 12 months. That is all I have for you. I can answer any questions that you might have. The applicant is here as well, and I gave the clerk a handout earlier to distribute to you as well from the applicant.
Are there any questions for town staff at this time? All right, let's hear from the applicant.
Hello, thank you guys for having me. My name is Sean Armstrong, owner and CEO of Armstrong Performance. My wife is currently in Florida with our child right now I currently play with the Tampa Bay Rays, so they're there preparing for the hurricane. A little bit about myself. I graduated from East Carolina University in physical wellness promotion. degree. We will be predominantly a baseball-specific sports training facility that will offer multiple batting cages, turf for infield, outfield development, pitching instruction, which will be my big thing that I'll be doing there. We'll also be offering a full state-of-the-art weight room for all of our members and people that come in there to be able to suffice for that type of training as well. A little bit about us for like community plans. Armstrong Performance plans to sponsor youth baseball teams for Parks and Recreation and offer facility accessibility for recreational, travel, and high school baseball teams as well. We also plan to offer a number of camps to the community. These camps will involve community field rentals, holiday facility camps, track-out camps, and charity donation camps. We also look forward to being involved with the town of Wendell markets and parades to involve our business more with the community as well. Things that we'll be offering in-house. Here at Armstrong Performance, we want to establish personal relationships with not only our clientele, but our clientele's families. We will be a membership-based facility that will allow us to offer private training to each of our athletes, along with the accessibility to book cages for free during member hours to come and practice their craft. Our membership packages will fulfill all of our athletes based on their ages and specific needs. Inside our doors, we welcome you to the state-of-the-art pitching and hitting software, along with a fully equipped weight room. All of our instructors have played at the collegiate level or professional level or have coached at both of them as well. Again, we are just super, super excited to bring something that's going to help the youth development to this town. I grew up in a really small town in Bridgeton, North Carolina, 400 people. We had nothing like this growing up, so it was kind of a dog-eat world type of thing, and I want to bring something to this area that can really help, exemplify what we have right in front of us. I mean, Wendell Little League All-Stars did a really good job this year. We were fortunate to kind of give them some stuff as well, and again, I'm very excited to get into this town and get this thing rolling for all of our kids and everything, and I'm be happy to answer any questions that you guys have for me as well.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the board for the applicant?
I have a few questions.
Okay.
Hey, thanks so much, Sean. As far as just the hours of operation, do you have tentative hours that you're kind of thinking about? What do you think about so far?
So as of now, our hours Monday through Friday will be 1 to 9 o'clock. 1 to 5 o'clock will be basically an open gym access. If you're a member, you go online, call, whatever you want to do, you book a cage, and that's where it says for free because you're a membership. If you're a member to our facility, we're not charging you to rent a cage. The membership also grants you a certain number of private lessons per month, so that way, like, you're not becoming a member and just coming into a batting cage. You're also coming in and getting private instruction to help develop your craft as you grow. And then on Saturdays, our hours will be 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. And then on Sundays, we are closed unless it is a team facility rental, which will be available from 1 to 7 p.m. And that will be available to all teams throughout the community, whether it be high school, recreational, travel ball teams, and so on. And then that time is also available for special use for our facility for like Tampa Bay Rays pitching coach wants to fly in this winter and do a pitching presentation for high school coaches to learn more about the data. And that's just kind of an example of what we would use. And then on Saturdays from 3 to 7, we will also offer team rentals as well. But for the vast majority, Monday through Friday, 1 p.m. to 9, and on Saturdays, 9 a.m. to 3 p.m.
And then you mentioned the memberships. Do you have an idea as far as how many memberships? Is it capped? Do you have a...
Yes, we'll have a hard cap. So like we don't want it to be an overflow where kids are coming in getting bypassed or fire marshal breaking codes, certain things like that, because we're going to be max occupancy 20 people basically per hour is what we'd be running at, and that's for a camp. Okay. And then to touch on the hours one more time, not the fast track, but from 5:30 to 9, it is solely private instruction. What I mean by that is we basically have 4 cages, so it's going to be 4 kids per hour. So that way, like, if your kid on a psychological, because we're going to also take our kids through psychological testing to learn what kind of learner they are, like all of these type of things that have been done by Justin Sua, who is the psychologist for the Tampa Bay Rays. So like that way, if your kid works better in a one-on-one environment versus you coming in and doing a training session and there's 10 other kids in the, we want to meet every specific need for your child to continue their development on what they have a passion for. So, yeah, did that answer your question?
Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Well, I think you heard us go on and on about downtown and our facade grants. What's going to be on the outside of the wrap?
So the wrap,
What's it look like?
so the wrap that we had on the window, it was a decal that had Armstrong Performance in the center, and then it had 5TC, which is 5-tool connection. They are doing all of our remote strength and conditioning for our clients that are all Division I or professional baseball-specific strength coaches, so that way all of our clientele get the best bang for your buck. And then also the parent, their legal guardian, whoever it may be, can see all of the videos that they have for their lifting, so that way they can get a fully understanding of what their child is doing. But we decided to not go with the wrap just because we didn't want to, one, try and do something that other businesses weren't gonna be doing. So we are just gonna go with the tent. The whole purpose for the wrap was basically translucent where you could see out, but you couldn't see in. And it would keep the glare from if a car turned and the lights went in the window. And a kid's hitting, we don't want anybody to get hit in the face. Or if someone's pitching and then the catcher gets hurt or something like that. That was the whole purpose of the decal. So we just decided to go with tint instead. And then obviously if a baseball hits the glass, we don't want it to shatter. So that was the whole purpose of the graphic as well. So that way it would splinter. God forbid it went through a cage or something. So we are just gonna do just tint on the main two windows and then just an Armstrong Performance, 2 little logos on the 2 front doors. So we've changed that as well. I think I talked with Stacy about that, and we decided to go against the film and just do tint, just to make it simple and clean.
Will there possibly be some scholarship opportunities?
Yes, so that is something that me and my wife are very, very passionate about whenever it comes to moving forward. Obviously, there's nothing set in place because we want to get our doors open first.
As long as that's on your mind.
Yes, but with my 12 years of professional baseball, that's one of the biggest things that I want to do is get back. That's a huge part of this whole entire transition.
Any other questions?
You know I want to talk about baseball, so.
Keep it.
I've said publicly that baseball is my love language, so my wife knows that, but I'm excited because pitching lab is a thing, and everybody's doing it. Maybe not to the same level that you will be, but the fact that you're going to be here in Wendell, I'm excited about it, so looking forward to it.
Yes, sir.
I guess now's the time to say that perhaps we can add a condition to keep people that train here from going to NC State. Is that a thing?
Just for the people in the crowd, we are
Lasky's
not
a
biased to
Pirate.
colleges.
He's wearing red.
But with saying that, go Pirates.
Be careful.
I think there'd be a legal problem with that.
Yeah. I sit near him in football, state football, so just
Hey,
saying.
I have a couple of state commits I train already. It's
Okay.
okay.
I'm excited. Bottom line.
You didn't say that with a whole lot of enthusiasm, so I don't know if I'm on, I don't know. Okay, so are there any other questions from the board?
Madam Mayor, I move we grant.
Okay, hang on a minute, we're not done with the hearing yet, we gotta go through some of the motions. No one else asked to speak, or no one was sworn, so I assume there's no interest in that. And are you all sure you've asked all your questions? All right, we'll close the hearing, and now you can go, sir.
Madam Mayor, I move we grant a special use permit and include the following conditions. 1, the applicable building permits, laws, and codes will be obtained and maintained. And 2, the subject business will be allowed to use film wrap over windows to block light. Once the business ceases to operate, the film wrap will be completely removed within 12 months. I would just suggest you say conditions 1 and 2.
Yeah.
That was a lot.
So we have a motion to approve the special use permit request for the property located at 11 East 3rd Street with conditions 1 and 2 stated previously. Is there any discussion on the motion?
Were we keeping those conditions even though they weren't being used? That was my question.
I would
Yeah.
like to keep the condition
Okay.
because there are some regulations on tint in the DMX district,
Okay,
and that'll
Keeps
give
everything
some
straight up.
flexibility
that's fine.
there.
I was just making sure.
Yep, good question. All right, is there any discussion on the motion? All right, all in favor signify by raising your hand. All right. Make them raise their hands now, it's a long story. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Item 5B is a public hearing to annex and rezone approximately 57.51 acres located at 0 and 1404 Eagle Rock Road from rural residential to residential 7, conditional to create Wendell Estates. Mr. Coates, how are you
Yep, good
tonight?
evening, Mayor and board members. As the mayor just mentioned, this case is to annex and rezone the properties at 0 and 1404 Eagle Rock Road from rural residential to residential 7. It's roughly a little over 57 acres. The applicant and their team is here tonight to answer any questions as well. As the development overall is 219 lots consisting of 151 single-family, 68 townhome lots. The master plan was part of your packet. Property is located east of Martin Pond Road, west of Eagle Rock. The property frontage is right there where Eagle Rise is under construction to the east. In this general area, quite a few residential projects under construction. To the south of this site is 1320 Wendell Falls Parkway, which is now known as Sadie Oaks, which is a townhome community. To the west is Martin Pond Road, where there's other phases of Wendell Falls and residential as well. The land immediate to the west of this site is owned by Duke Energy, which I will explain in a little more detail as we move forward looking at their plans. Overall plans, the major east-west road that connects with Eagle Rock is a collector road. This is the same collector road that was in the Martin Pond residential. It's also the same road that was constructed as part of Eagle Rise and will eventually make its way to Jake May and Wendell Valley Boulevard. This provides a significant east-west connection that parallels Wendell Falls Parkway. The property to the west is owned by Duke Energy. We've had some really early conversations about that road continuing through their property and lining up with the Martin Pond residential. This road would allow traffic to go from Jake May, bypassing Wendell Falls Parkway, yet still get to Wendell Falls in the Wake Med area. So this collector is something we've been pushing for and lining up through all these projects. And the vision is really getting close to a reality with just a few parcels left to make that significant connection. Also north-south, the main road is a collector that does tie into the 1320 project, which has access to Wendell Falls Parkway. Their amenities, you can see, are in the more of the central part of the site. The lots in the northeast part are 60-foot, between 10 and 12, 13,000 square foot lots. The sites down in the southeast corner are for townhomes. There is a wide variety of lot sizes, front-loaded, single-family, alley-loaded, a wide variety of products in this neighborhood. Amenities do include pool, amenity center, walking trails, playground, those amenities for this 219-lot neighborhood. The applicant is meeting all of our requirements for dimensions of lots within the R7 district. And then there's the townhome requirements. They're meeting all those setbacks. Along those collector roads, any home that fronts on that is alley loaded. Our collector roads are meant to move pedestrians, vehicles, and bicyclists through a variety of neighborhoods. I'm going to go through a variety of zoning conditions, so bear with me here. Condition 1 is to promote a variation in home appearance. No single-family front elevation shall be constructed within 3 homes from an identical elevation. For corner lots, this shall also apply to the lots diagonally across the intersection. Single-family homes shall have a minimum lot size of 3,500 square feet. Townhome lots shall have a minimum of 1,350. Townhome uses shall be permitted by right as part of the approved conditional district. Condition 4, townhomes shall not exceed 35% of the overall development. This is a similar condition to Eagle Rise, which is nearby, and some other neighborhoods as well. Condition 5, garage doors in all single-family homes and townhomes will have windows or carriage hardware. Condition 6, the front yard and the street-facing side shall be sod. All yards on corner lots shall be sod. That's a standard kind of condition that we've been seeing. Condition 7, material siding. At least 2 of the following materials shall be used on each unit: wood, fiber cement, metal, masonry brick, brick veneer, masonry stone, stone veneer, or synthetic stone. The use of vinyl siding shall be prohibited except for trim elements of the dwelling facade. Each single-family home and townhome building shall contain an element of one of the following styles: horizontal, shake, or board and batten design. Condition 8, amenities shown in the master plan, including the pool, playground, dog park, and all improved open space, shall be provided as shown in the master plan and maintained by the HOA. Condition 9, front-loaded garages shall not extend more than 10 feet beyond the face of each dwelling unit. Condition 10, a minimum of 10 inches roof overhang shall be provided along the front and back of each dwelling unit. Condition 11, a 10-foot undisturbed buffer will be maintained around the development. Where existing plants do not meet the requirements, they'll supplement plants in that buffer. The parcel on the eastern side of Eagle Rock Road will have a 20-foot type B planted buffer installed around that parcel. Zoning condition 12, each unit shall utilize decorative front door with a minimum 20% glazing. This is a kind of a newer condition for us, but that glazing on the window prevents someone from directly looking in your door. There's like a slight film on it to block someone easily looking in. I have it on my house. It is nice. It is a nice feature to have. So it is a condition that is newer for us, but is common, especially I think right now in Wendell Falls. A lot of homes are using that glazing. Condition 13, all single-family homes will have a rear patio deck of at least 64 square feet. Zoning condition 14, single-family homes shall have a combined side setback of 10% of the lot width with a minimum of 3 feet. The entire side setback may be allocated to one side of the lot with a minimum of 6 feet total with building separation, providing that the setback condition is consistent with the block. This is allowed per the UDO, and we have utilized that in some single-family neighborhoods. Condition 15, single-family homes located at the corner of 2 public rights-of-way shall have a combined side setback of 15% of the lot width. This just provides a little more visibility at the intersections. The entire side setback, however, may be allocated to one side of the lot with at least a minimum 6 feet between buildings. Condition 16, the rear and side elevations of the units that can be seen from the right-of-way shall have a minimum of 4-inch trim around the windows. This just provides a more decorative look for the homes facing the public right-of-way. Condition 17, all single-family dwellings shall have a minimum 8 inches exposed foundation, which shall be wrapped in brick or stone veneer on the front and corner sides. This does provide elevation for drainage and an appearance for the homes. Condition 18, accessory buildings shall be constructed of materials that match the single-family dwelling. This requirement will be in the restrictive covenants for the community. Condition 19, all townhome and units shall have at least 1 window per floor. Condition 20 is related to townhome buildings shall have at least 1 roofline break of 2 feet. That prevents the front facade of a block of 5 or 6 townhomes from all being at the same elevation. This allows variation of 2 feet, and so there's a step back for those units. A property owners association, townhome HOA will be responsible for maintaining the townhome yards. The initial covenants for the townhome HOA will provide that the townhome HOA is responsible for maintenance of the roofs and exterior of the townhome buildings and for termite control related to the buildings as well. Condition 22, the minimum square footage of any townhome shall be 1,200 square feet. The minimum square footage for any single-family home shall be 1,500 square feet. Condition 23, a minimum of 2 units in each townhome group shall have a masonry water table of at least 24 inches on the front elevation. This provides for some decorative materials that go 24-inch from the foundation up, just provides an extra detail for those communities. We have seen this in a few townhome communities where the water table has been added as a condition. Condition 24, the Phase 3 plat, which a plat for the town is before we let you record the plat of those lots, before you can have sales. They have to have the amenity center construction has begun before plat 3 can be recorded. So that means phases 1 and 2 can get started, but before phase 3 plat is received final approval from the town, the amenity center has to be under construction. Condition 25, alley 1 is to be 25 foot back of curb to back of curb with a 30-foot right-of-way. All other alleys will be 15 feet back of curb with a 20-foot right-of-way, with the exception of alleys with side on-street parking. There we go. In their design of the townhome area, they've built in some on-street parking, built in those alleyways, similar to some of the newer phases of Wendell Falls where there's guest parking. 26, all 6-foot sidewalk adjacent to on-street parking and outside of public right-of-way shall be located within a public sidewalk easement. This is very common in our street right-of-way. If we're having a wider sidewalk and on-street parking, it's common to have part of the sidewalk in a public easement. That condition we've done a few times for some projects. Condition 27, the main entrance to the subdivision, Road A, will be used as the construction entrance for the development. This condition was added at the planning board so that the neighborhood to the north, that's NCDOT roads, intent was not to have construction go through that existing neighborhood and use this neighborhood's main entrance as the only way for construction. Zoning condition 28, the development will dedicate the right-of-way at Road C for a future connection to the east. Currently, right now, we have no projects in on the parcels to the east. We know that will be coming, and so that future right-of-way was added at the planning board as a condition as well. Environmental, the applicant will need to obtain stormwater erosion control permits from Wake County before any site work can commence. The proposed development plan will need to meet the requirements of the town of Wendell UDO. The proposed plan does show the development creating 4 stormwater control measures on site. Buffers, UDO requires a 20-foot type B around the existing single-family home lot on Eagle Rock Road because the new zoning is more intense. So they are showing that. They also have committed to a 10-foot type C buffer around the perimeter of the property. The proposed development plan does include street tree plantings along both Eagle Rock and internal public streets as required. Open space, they're required to show 332,000 square feet of open space. They are having roughly 729,000. The plan includes, as we mentioned earlier, dog park, pool house, walking paths, and a playground. Streams and wetlands, the current plan does show the locations of all streams and wetlands. There is a noose riparian buffer on the northern part of the site and wetlands on the northern side and central. The development plan does show the required 50-foot noose riparian buffer, which is measured from the top of the stream bank. Transportation, there's quite a few road improvements. UDO did require a traffic impact analysis for the development, and we do require that for any development that exceeds 100 peak trips per day. So the road improvements you see there in the solid black turning lanes are all of the turning lanes that the project would need to construct. We'll start with Eagle Rock. So on southbound Eagle Rock, coming from the Wake Tech area, there will be 2 100-foot left turn lanes at Site Access A, which is the main road into the community, but also at Eagles Crossing Drive, which is an existing neighborhood. Eagle Rock Road northbound, there will be a 100-foot turn lane into their development at Site Access A. Along Wendell Falls Parkway, where it says extend to 100 feet, the existing project at 1320 is supposed to be building that, and they're under construction, so they will be. So they will not have to construct that based on 1320, but each of these TIAs is if 1320 didn't go under construction, they would have to build a turn lane. And so they also includes a 150-foot left turn lane at Eagle Rock and Wendell Falls Parkway, and then other turn lanes as well at these intersections. So significant turn lane improvement. As we look at designing of Eagle Rock and Wendell Falls Parkway, with all the developments that have had turn lanes included in there, we will be having conversations as the design of that intersection goes forward to discuss a fee in lieu for wholesale improvements. We'd like to do it once. Just to go back, the plan does show road connections to Eagle Crossing subdivisions and then 2 connections to 1320 Wendell Falls Parkway. There are also additional 3 stubs to adjacent properties. One common question that we had a few times throughout this process is if there would be a connection to Wiley Oaks. Just while I'm on camera and on here, I'll say there is no connection to Wiley Oaks. Wiley Oaks ends in a cul-de-sac on private property. There is no way this development you'd have to purchase land, remove the cul-de-sac and try to, but they're not proposing that at all. There is no connection to Wiley Oaks. They're also, they do meet the parking requirements for the homes. There's also parking at the amenity center, as well as some parallel parking on some of the internal streets as well. You can see the full build-out of Eagle Rock Road, the 110-foot right-of-way, 4-lane divided. This is the same cross-section as Wendell Falls Parkway. They will be building their portion of improvements along Eagle Rock. Here's what the 2-lane collector roads look like, similar to Big Falls and Taylor in Wendell Falls. Travel lanes, bike lanes, planning area, and then 6-foot sidewalks. There's 3 phases for the project. Open space requirements have been evaluated per phase, and the requirements are being met in each phase as well as for the overall development. As we mentioned earlier, there is a zoning condition related to when the amenity center has to be under construction. Comp plan, Blueprint Wendell 2030 identifies this area as medium residential 2. Medium residential 2 does call for a mix of housing type between townhome, attached single family, and single family detached. The applicant is proposing a wide variety of unit type, front-loaded, alley-loaded, certain lot sizes, there's a variety. The density of the project is 3.94, just under the 4 to 8, so technically we have to say it's inconsistent for the density of the comp plan, but they are providing more open space than required, so, I mean, if we really wanted them, we could say, hey, add more units, get to that 4, but this is the design they have. It does show a wide variety of open space in the form of pocket neighborhood parks that also has a dog park, pool house, walking paths. They are using, and this has come up quite a few times, there's been some projects that have given us easements or constructing multi-use path underneath the Duke Energy lines that run in that area. They are proposing to build a 6-foot multi-use path underneath that Duke area from the east side of their project to the west. This is a key connectivity. Of course, we still want the multi-purpose trail along Wendell Falls Parkway, connecting Wendell Falls with downtown and the core of Wendell. However, the power line area does provide a connection to that Martin Pond and portions of Wendell Falls a little easier and a little less travel. So we are getting those connections on both along the road and under that Duke easement. And so this project does have the collector roads, but also the walking path underneath the Duke easement. Any recommended change to the zoning map should be accompanied by a statement explaining how the change is or is not consistent. The only reason we're saying it's inconsistent is the density is just under 4 at 3.94. Other than that, it is very much consistent with Blueprint Wendell 2030 and does assist with creating a diversity of housing. As we mentioned, the different lot sizes and dimensions. Connectivity, this is a key transportation improvements for us, not only at the intersection of Eagle Rock and Wendell Falls Parkway, but those collector roads. Very valuable. If there's an accident on Wendell Falls Parkway, we will have options for people to move about. And so those collector roads are key to getting people, whether they're walking, biking, or driving from different parts of Wendell. TRC has reviewed all the plans. If you were to approve this, the final development plans would go back through, the construction drawings would go back through TRC. They did hold a neighborhood meeting virtually on March 21st. 11 property owners attended. Minutes are included as an attachment in your report. Staff the development is inconsistent due to the density proposed. However, but it could be considered very reasonable since it fulfills the goals of the comp plan and the development patterns mentioned in that district. I can field any questions that you have. The applicant is here and does have a PowerPoint as well.
Okay, so open the public hearing. Are there any questions from the board at this time?
Just so I'm clear, in the diagram, looks like there's 2 main roads that run north-south. Am I correct?
Give me 1 second, I'll go.
That's fine.
Is it on the site plan?
It was on the, it's that colorful one there, that's the one, that's fine too.
Okay.
So we have these two roads run north to south.
Yep.
The one more in the middle of the development, is that one going all the way to Wendell Falls Parkway?
It is,
eventually?
yes.
Okay. And are they going to be connecting that all the way to the parkway?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, 1320 is building to that property line, and they're building north. Yep. Those turnarounds are on there, just in case 1320, for some reason, didn't build to the, something were to happen. They,
Clarify, this developer's not building to Wendell Falls Parkway, they're building to the next property.
yes, which is
That
building
one's
to the
currently
parkway.
under construction.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. And then the other, the other road run north to south, that'll just kind of, like you were saying, for now, just run into the other stub out to that lot and be developed later on? Is that the plan for the other project?
Yeah, so that one's a 52-foot local street that will not connect. The one on the far right does not connect yet, or will not connect, because that's not part of 1320. I believe it is. Is it? Okay. Yes. I'll verify while they're doing their presentation.
Thank you, Brian.
You're welcome. And the alley.
Any more questions from the board?
Yeah, can you just point out the street that there's a condition about right-of-way being reserved to the east? Can you point out where?
Yeah, it's Street C. I can't see it from here. Let me pull out. I'm gonna.
Bottom left.
Yeah, I can't. Give me 1 second to pull the plans out. I'm 47 now. I can't read that screen from here.
No, we were looking at this and you had the pointer. I knew we wouldn't see that here.
Yeah, so it's Road C is the very bottom east-west road.
Well, and that was my question, was whether it was that one or the one to the north of it, which does not totally connect across, but it's not, so that addresses my question. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anything else from the board? All right, let's hear from the applicant.
All right. Good evening, Mayor Gray, Commissioners. My name's Toby Coleman. I'm a land use attorney, 150 Fayetteville Street, Raleigh, North Carolina, here on behalf of the applicant and a large team of folks. I'll go ahead and put everybody's name up. So we have a large group of folks here tonight to answer any questions that may come up. Brian's done a really good job with this presentation, so I'm going to try to speed through it. One thing I will note is that I think, and Patty, tell me if I'm wrong, but we may need to correct, so Commissioner Eatman, I think you may be correct that it may be road, actually may be road H there on the east side of the property that is the connection area under the condition, and not road C down at the bottom left there, because I think that, is that correct?
That's correct. That is closer to the property line. There's two parcels there. And so we.
Can you come up
Yeah.
here? That's okay.
Patty Harrell Hilburn, McKimmon Creed, I have to pull this down, 1730 Varsity Drive. So originally we had spoken about putting the right-of-way on Road C, but I believe at the planning board that we decided, and you helped me with this, but we decided to move it to where the property line, closer to the property line, where the two parcels adjoin there. Yeah.
So we show C, the road connection to Road C.
And we can do that if needed.
I may let the,
Can someone run the letters by me again as to which one's which?
yeah, Road C is the bottom east-west road there on the picture. So it's the one, and I think the idea is that if, as written, that condition would reserve the area on the east side of that east-west road running through the yellow. Is that correct, Patty?
Correct.
There is, on that picture, what it shows is a little notch on the road the next road up, which I think is labeled as Road H. Hopefully, we're going to come up with some really good names, and they're not going to be Road C and Road H. But, so I think that's what we're talking about here. So it was a good question. Just
Toby,
wanted
to clarify, is that the orangish yellow area or the purple area at the bottom there?
Orangish yellow area is the area adjacent to where one of the roads would have, one of the east-west roads there would have, on the east side, some,
The idea was to provide a road connector to the potentially
east.
commercial parcels along Wendell Falls Parkway to have a different access way into it. There are a couple private parcels there that may have future use on Eagle Rock Road, excuse me.
Yeah. Have I thoroughly confused you yet?
No, I understand what you're saying. I'll just, my logic for just 1 second, and then happy to defer to staff and whoever else about what y'all think is actually best, because I just pretend to know what I'm talking about. I think that Street C, the one that goes from the western boundary on my left as I'm looking at this big screen to almost the eastern boundary on my right toward the bottom, sort of curves down after it goes through this intersection, gets over here close. If that's C, I think it makes a lot of sense for there to be an opportunity for that to connect into the parcel to the east, just because it is more of a thoroughfare than this street to the north of that I think is H, sort of doglegs into an alley, or dead ends into an alley, and then doglegs to the south. I get why the connectivity makes sense there from the sense that it's closest to both of the parcels that are to the east of this area. So I understand that one too. I like C. All that being said, who owns the strip of property between the road, whatever this 50-foot collector on the eastern side is, and the property line? The HOA, or can we dedicate all of it as right-of-way, and then who, I mean, I guess maybe that's not what staff wants, because there's a maintenance question, but can we leave open lots of options depending on how these two parcels to the east develop in the future of
Sure. You know, we could.
how connections work?
Yeah, we could say something like one of the two, or if you're looking for both.
I always like to keep going
You always
up.
like both? Okay, that's fine. We could do both. So we're willing.
And I don't mean to step on staff's toes.
No,
I know,
you're not.
Brian, you've got other
That's fine.
feedback, but that's sort of where I'm at in my
I
mind.
was just going to add, there's two parcels to the east. The one that's kind of north of the power line is classified as medium residential 2 in the comp plan. The one south, where either Street C or H would connect to, is classified as activity center. And so there was that desire to make sure we have connectivity to the commercial nodes. But I think with that updated condition, that does allow that to happen.
All right. So anyway, so you've already heard from Patty. We also have, we have the builder here, traffic impact, our traffic engineers here if there's any traffic questions. I am obviously the lawyer who's probably the least qualified to answer any technical questions, so I'm obviously the one that's going to present. But anyway, I do want to note that this is I've gone to a lot of public meetings in the Triangle and around the state. This is the first time I've been to a meeting, and Mr. Armstrong's still here, where we have a actual current major league player who's here on his night off. I actually just checked this. It's amazing. So anyway, cool. That is very cool, and I know for a baseball mad group, that's very cool. So I just wanted to note that. Anyway, this project, as Brian said, is in the town's ETJ. Brian did a good job of sort of outlining the surrounding developments, but it is right sort of in the smack of a lot of the developments going on just north of Wendell Falls Parkway on Eagle Rock Road. And I'm going to run through this really quickly because, again, Brian did a good job. If you all have questions, don't hesitate, just stop me or say, hey, Toby, I need a question, or I need somebody else besides you to answer a question. This is just a color version of the plan. The idea basically here is that there's going to be different types, different sizes of lots, different types of residences provided in a single community with a lot of green open space. One of the things actually that we are willing to offer to do, I know that we had heard that there was an interest in perhaps us committing to a slightly larger paved pathway. So there's a walking path that runs through the Duke Energy Transit transmission easement that runs east to west through the property. It's 6 feet in the plan. We're willing to offer 10 feet. And so we're happy to offer that up. And what we would say is that the only thing I would note is that there's one point where you have 2 paths. What we would say, I know, Commissioner Eatman, you like it to be everything all the time, but we'd like just one path that's 10 feet, and if there's an offshoot, that it could be 6 feet.
We could do 12 if you're doing 2 6s. Then we can just have one
Hey,
12.
we could do a lot of things, but we'd like to do 10. That's what.
Since you got it pulled up here, where is all the extra parking for visitors and things?
I'll let Patty answer that.
How many spots roughly for all those?
Patty, why don't you come up and so that they can hear you?
Again, Patty Hilburn. Off the top of my head, I'm not sure exactly how many parking spaces. I know that we do meet the guest parking well, you don't have guest parking requirements.
That's why I always ask.
I got you,
That's always a
yeah.
problem, because all the developments, there's nowhere to park, nowhere to visit, like the other developments.
Okay.
We're having people parking on the road, and there's nowhere, can't get fire trucks on and
Right.
stuff, which you can't do that here, but you could on older subdivisions.
Right.
And, we have celebrations, birthdays, where's everyone gonna park when the mother-in-law comes over and you have
Sure.
6 kids in all their cars?
Sure.
So, and according to the plans right now, there's 26 parking spots at the amenity center. There's also they're meeting our 20-foot requirement for driveways, and also all the units have either a 1 or 2 car garage. There are also 18 additional spots in the townhome area for kind of built into those alley parking lot areas, similar to like
20-foot driveways is the minimum. That's good. That's a good. How about the garages? Are they big enough to pull a full-size truck in and park? Are they 24 foot by 24?
I'll let the
Are they?
Yes.
And I know we've had problems pulling in, hitting the sheetrock in front. You pull your truck in, standard F-150, you can't even get it in there, so. I just have to ask those questions.
All right.
So instead of having a lot of greenways, I'd like to see more parking.
We want both.
I'll revisit
I mean,
being the all of the above person. I
both.
don't think we have to cut one for the
I
other.
would rather see extra some parking somewhere, I really would, but anyway.
Well, that is the challenge, obviously. It's how do you do all of the above? This is, if there's any other questions, if there's not, I'll move on. The split, I think Brian may have gone over it, but it's 151 single-family homes, 68 townhomes for a total of 219. We'd say if you round up, it's 4 units, but we respect what Brian said, that it's just under, so they have to find us inconsistent. Again, I know that a lot of you folks like baseball, so probably going from 3.96 to 4.0 is just heresy. So I won't dwell on that too much. There's a pool, there's a couple parks, there's a dog park down at the bottom on the south. So there's a fair amount of amenities. A lot of the conditions that Brian read out relate to design features, design requirements, and a lot of the lots that you see in the master plan envision a lot of different types of uses. One of the conditions that's in there is you can't repeat the same elevation next door, so they have to be separated, I think, by 3 lots. So we have a number of potential elevations. Here's some of the samples.
Can I ask you a question real
Yeah.
quick on the design? And this was a Brian question that I skipped earlier, but this 20% glaze condition is new for us. What does that mean? Is that like 20% of the door includes glazed glass, or is it like a tent standard that it is 20% glazed out of 100%
I'm going to get
glazed?
the builder to come up. Come on, Scott, come on.
Come on up and join the party.
Join the fun.
All the front doors will have some glazing on them, glazing being, window. They're requiring 20% minimum
Of the area of the door?
of the area of the door.
That's what I was just trying to understand what
Which
the
is a
20% was
little window
of. And that's,
Up
Area
here
of
to
the
allow
glass.
light in.
Glass.
Area of the glass, not
Yes.
the door.
Yes,
You
area
have
of the
5
glass.
feet of glass,
Oh.
1 foot has to be glazed.
that's different than what I said, so make sure I understand. A door, in my understanding, can be made of some combination of wood and glass. I'm not trying to be smart, I just really want to make sure I understand this. Are we saying that if that is the door, 100% of it, that 20% of that entire door needs to be glass that's glazed? Or do you then subtract out the amount of the door that is made of glass and say of that portion of the full door, 20% needs to be glazed? Does that make sense as two different questions or two
Well,
different options?
When you refer to glazing, you're talking about glass. So of 100% of the door, 20% of it has to be glass.
And that answers my question. I'll tell you what, other thing I was thinking of would be unglazed glass. So I didn't know if you're saying you could have 80% of the glass on the door be clear and 20% of that glass be glazed.
Glazing refers to glass.
Okay.
Solar film or something like that is is what he was talking about, where you make it an obscure glass.
So that's a different thing.
That's a different animal.
I understand your answer now. Thank you. And I understand, I think our condition may be a little bit better too.
All right.
That's new in us.
So we've talked about the roads a little bit. Again, the roads will all be, most of these roads will either be connected or be in a position to connect to future development. The existing development to the north is the one we're protecting with the provision about all construction coming from Eagle Rock. They had concerns. They didn't want us coming from through their neighborhood roads, as Brian mentioned. It is also, that portion of the development is Phase 3, so it will be, hopefully, they will be least impacted by a lot of the work that's going on. In terms of buffers, this just gives you a visual of the buffers that were outlined, so 10-foot perimeter buffers. There is one notch there on Eagle Rock, one existing property owner who is going to retain his property, and there's a 20-foot buffer there to protect them. And the buffer, along with that, is even more buffer, because then you've got the stream buffer and other things. So anyway, this is a summary of all the benefits, and with that, we are available for questions.
Any questions from the board?
You're talking about the Eagle Rock Road, the turn lane you were talking about, not doing it now? You're talking about getting fee in lieu of or something?
I believe.
'Cause we really need that turn lane if you're gonna have all that, that lane's gonna be needed. I mean, I don't know how soon we're gonna do that intersection, but if it's gonna be 10 years from now, we need that turn lane now.
So the intersection of Eagle Rock, Wendell Falls Parkway is under design with VHB. Each project, we've had quite a few over the years that have had turn lanes included in their TIA at that intersection. We will be working with VHB and each development to see if we want them to move forward with constructing that portion, or, and none of them right now, other than Eagle Rise, are at a point where they've actually built anything. The others, all of the ones on Lake Glad are not under construction yet. And so part of those turn lanes are they're not required to have them built until they're ready to start building homes. And so we've got some time, but each turn lane in each TIA is gonna be evaluated with the town and VHB to see if we want a fee in lieu, so we can do a wholesale bigger project, or if we need that turn lane constructed short-term. So we've got time. There's still a lot of projects that have not
Brian,
broken ground.
If I may, real quick. The bond referendum presentation included town funding that would contribute towards the town's share of this improvement. It's inefficient for each developer to come in and put one lane, or take out something, change pole. It's inefficient. The development community asked the town to coordinate with DOT one project to do it all at one time. We're doing the design as a town now, and they would contribute in with the town funds to implement it as soon as.
How long before we get started type of thing?
Well, it depends how much funding is from the development community, whether or not a bond referendum gets passed. If not, what funding do I need to find from a different place?
Can I ask a real quick
All of that comes in, but the idea would be to construct as soon as design is done. Yeah, it's in our 5-year CIP.
We already
It's not
designed
10
it, we
years
designed
out.
it in the last budget or whatever, yeah.
No, it's in our 5-year CIP. It's just a couple years out right now.
Is the fee in lieu option as a potential component of improving that intersection speed up overall comprehensive improvements to that intersection?
We'd have to get with DOT and the developers. It just depends on where they are in that process, but there could be, yeah.
I mean, theoretically, it definitely speeds it up over 6 individual
Turn lanes.
developers building individual, shutting down their version of the road for a couple days so that they can their turn lane.
Yep.
Anything else from the board?
Real quick, Madam Mayor, I just want to confirm, obviously, we have 28 conditions, which is probably the largest number that we've had, but I want to confirm on the multipurpose, multi-use path.
Yes.
I didn't really see it mentioned anywhere, that even the 6-foot path necessarily. Is that a condition that, and I guess this is a staff question, but to have a minimum, in case they feel like they can do 12, we'll have at least a minimum of 10?
Yeah, so the site plan currently contains 6 feet, so our preference from a staff side is if they've committed to a 10, I think having that as a zoning condition, so it's clear when construction drawings come in that that path has to be a minimum 10.
Okay.
So I would add a condition.
29?
29.
Okay. Sorry.
And again, that is acceptable to us. We would
Thank you.
proffer that. We do proffer that. I'll put it that way.
Well, you know, we've talked a lot about connectivity here, and obviously this is a pretty important piece from Wendell Falls to downtown. It's a big thing, and it has
Absolutely.
been for a long time, and this is sort of in the middle, I'd say, of the puzzle, so it's important. Thank you.
Yep.
Anything else from the board?
Yeah, one more, and I'm gonna let Brian finish this thought, because I think this might be a Brian question, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Okay. On the Greenway, to continue to harp on that point for a little bit, I recognize that electrical right-of-ways are a nice opportunity to build greenways, because it's a strip of land that already exists and is under at least one property one party has an interest in the property. That being said, I don't think it's always the best place to build a greenway. It's out in the open, it's hot, it's not particularly interesting compared to other places that greenways could go. That's fine, but my question is, when we think about where this parcel's laid out and obviously trying to build beyond, especially east beyond this and west as well with that greenway connection, what's east of Eagle Rock Road, greenway-wise, is that called Eagle Rise?
Yes, so Eagle Rise is just north of that easement area. There is 1032 Wendell Falls Parkway, and then there is a property owned by a builder, but they have not submitted plans. But the 1032 actually has a path getting built in that easement in their project as well.
But still in the
And
power line easement?
Yes,
is still-
and they're building on their property the 10-foot multi-use path along Wendell Falls Parkway. So they're providing both in their project.
Okay.
Any other questions? Did you have one? Yeah.
Brian, can you remind me of the wording of the condition that we've used around, I think it's not build to rent, not build to, but basically that these would go on the market at some point, like they would be.
Yeah, we've had a couple different ones that would say this will not be a build for rent product. Or we've had one that I believe stated these homes will be for sale to individuals.
Toby, is there a line of text that works for you guys in that regard?
I just checked with my client. He's willing to agree to that. That is their plan. I'll leave it to Jim to advise you on how enforceable that is. But-
And so, to be fair, what I am attempting to get out of this is for someone to say that is the plan.
Yeah.
I found one scenario where I went back and said, this is not at all what you guys were talking about. And then when I looked at the actual record, we never pegged down what we were talking about. So this is a way of at least understanding what intent is.
Yeah,
That's
the
not-
intent is that. And so we'd be willing to
Thank you.
offer that, whatever the phraseology that Brian used.
Not for build for rent or intent for single family.
Is intended for sale to, they're intended for, the townhomes and single-family homes are intended for sale product, something like that?
That would be condition 30.
Condition 30. Do we want to go for 31?
Yeah. Put mine in there for, let's see, there's 219 parking spots.
I don't know if I can do that for you.
One for each home that's there.
We do ask that you amend condition 28 to include, will dedicate right-of-way at Road C and H for a future connection to the east. So amend condition 28.
Can you tell me that again?
Yep. The development will dedicate right-of-way at Road C and Road H for a future connections to the east.
All right. Are there any other questions from the board? Is there anyone from the public that would like to speak in the public hearing tonight about this project? Or against it, anyone? All right, we'll close the public hearing. Go ahead.
Mayor, I move that we approve the annexation rezoning of 57.51 acres, 0 and 1404 Eagle Rock Road. I do not have a list of these condition
And adopt the
edits.
attached ordinance.
And adopt the attached ordinance along with the conditions that you'll, I'm sure, restate really clearly for me, or however Mary Beth and others need them to be stated.
Okay. All right. Keep it, listen out, Mr. Colley. We have a motion to approve the annexation and rezoning request and adopt the attached ordinance with these modifications of the conditions. Number 28, a right-of-way at road, dedicated right-of-way at road C and H for future connections to the east. Number 29, a 10-foot path from 6 foot. And I didn't get all the rest of that, I'm sorry. And number 30, this is intended as a for-sale product.
Minimum of 10 on number 29. Minimum of 10 feet.
Minimum of 10, yes, from 6. Yes, thank you. While I was writing and scratching it out and writing it again, and, yes. Okay, is there any discussion on the, is that an accurate statement of what you wanted to say?
Is that an accurate understanding of all the other people who have some sign off of this particular portion of the motion? See lots of nods.
All good, Mr. Hawley? Okay. Is there any discussion of the motion? All right, all in favor, signify, raise your hands. 4. Anyone opposed? All right, thank y'all. We'll move into our administrative items. Item 6A is the appointment to the Board of Adjustment. Yep. She passed those out already? Okay.
We're going to go through all of this again. Just kidding. I'm going backwards.
Go the other way.
There we go. Okay, so tonight we need to appoint 3 members to the Board of Adjustment. As you have heard many times, the appointment process started in February of this year. There were not enough applications received, so we reopened the application period. This time we have 5 applications, and we need you to vote in 3 new members. So this will be a ballot process, so if you make your 3 choices, ballots should have been at your desk, and write your name so that I can. Okay, so our 3 new Board of Adjustment members will be Dustin Reed, Mark Etheridge, and Nicole Bills.
Do we still have the need for 1 ETJ member for the Board of Adjustment?
Yes, we
So-
have ETJ, Parks and Recreation, and Board of Adjustment that we have, I believe, received no. We might have received 1 Parks and Rec, but no ETJ applications. We've received applications from people that do not live anywhere in Wake County, but
It's an opportunity for folks that live in the ETJ to participate in things that we do, so we hope that you will join us and get involved. Thank you to everyone who was willing to serve and applied.
Madam Mayor, and I was just going to flag this for the clerk, but I noticed on one of the applications of, I think it was Ms. Bills, I think she's currently on an appearance commission. I think she currently has a board spot.
her term expired.
Okay.
Her term was expiring, and she wanted to switch boards.
I was
So
just making sure there wasn't an additional spot we were
Yes,
going to
I
have to.
think she was one of the original ones, so when she applied, she was still on it, but hers ended June 30th, 2023.
Okay,
She's no
Thank
longer on any board.
thank you. I was just making sure we didn't need to re-advertise another vacancy on another.
Mayor and members of the board, we'll need to get some training to this group right away because there is an appeal pending to the Board of Adjustment on an interpretation by the planning director, filed last week by Mr. Coleman on behalf of Ellis Development.
Let's make that happen ASAP. Thank you. Item 6B is a fee waiver request by Alliance Health to host a community wellness fair and family fun day at the Wendell Community Center on September 30th, 2023, from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Mr. Pulaski.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and Commissioners. I'm here seeking a motion to request to waive a fee for the use of the Wendell Community Center for the Community Wellness Fair and Family Fun Day. The Alliance Health Wake County Consumer Family Advisory Committee requests a fee waiver to host the Community Wellness Fair and Family Fun Day at the Community Center on September the 30th from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. On June 28th, the Alliance Health Wake County Consumer Family Advisory Committee submitted a request to use the Wendell Community Center for their upcoming Wellness Fair and Family Fun Day. The event will benefit Wake County community members with behavioral health, physical health, and other wellness resources. This event will give children and families a day where they can spend together visiting resource tables, participating in games, and socializing with other community members. They will be setting up at 9 o'clock a.m. With the event starting at 10, lasting until 2 p.m., and cleanup would conclude by 3 o'clock p.m. This event is open to the public, and they are expecting 100 people to attend. So the non-waived fees would be one part-time person of $140, a cleanup fee of $250 for a total of $390. The amount waived would be the 1 hour setup fee for $20, the 1 hour breakdown for $20, and the event rental of $500 for a total of $540. The Parks and Rec Commission did receive this request at their August meeting and did vote in favor of waiving the rental fee.
Are there any questions from the board for Mr. Pulaski?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I have a couple questions, real quick. I'm sorry. Jeff, with this organization that's doing this, do you know if they have this in other locations around town?
They have, not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
I think this is something new for this area.
Okay, and I was just curious to kind of why they picked Wendell of all places to come.
I invited them to be here tonight, so.
Okay, so I guess my only question is, and we've had this discussion before, or at least I brought it up before, is I don't ever want Wendell to be the reason we people coming here is because it's cheap. And so that's my only concern with waiving these fees for out-of-town organizations is that, you know, they keep coming here, which I guess I love the resource of them coming here, but then are they coming here just because we're the cheapest of all the other towns?
I know in the past we had one, it's been some years ago, and they were a group out of Wilson that found out that fees could be waived, and they did come here, and it was waived. This is a Wake County based group, though.
Okay. And then is this going to interfere with any programming for that day?
No.
Okay.
Any other questions from the board?
Madam Mayor, I move we approve the fee waiver request.
All right, we have a motion to approve the fee waiver to request. Is there any discussion on the motion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Should have said, raise your hands, so y'all remember. Item 6C is an ordinance to amend 24-90, parking in specific places prohibited, the Town of Wendell Code of Ordinances. Mr. Coates.
Yep, good evening, Mayor and board members. This next item, you previously saw a portion of this at your June 12th meeting. There was a request by the Edgemont Landing HOA to amend our parking section to include them in the streets that are prohibited, similar to Wendell Falls. The town, as we said, did receive the request. Since the June 12th meeting, we did go out and do a site visit, myself, Public Works Director, and Captain Slaughter with the police, and Mark Collins, our town manager. It was 4 of us in a truck. It was lots of fun. So just picture that. So just to give you a little feedback, Edgemont Landing was approved many years ago, and it's very similar to the early phases of Wendell Falls, where the streets are back-to-back are 27, 28 feet. There's no guest parking other than at the amenity center, which is very similar to the first few phases of Wendell Falls. The current ordinance does prohibit parking on streets in Wendell Falls. The HOA was required to send us a list of dates to the town for parking when it's allowed around certain holidays. Staff did determine that if this is going to apply to a variety of neighborhoods, we don't want different dates from each neighborhood. We'd rather go by state holiday calendar, or town calendar, some calendar for all the neighborhoods. We chose state to standardize the policy. We did evaluate the existing street layout within Edgemont Landing to identify any areas that could contain on-street designated parking spaces. There was an attached map in your packet that shows the location of potentially some parking areas highlighted in orange that do not conflict with driveways. If you look at the aerial of their neighborhood, the driveways make it very challenging to allow on-street parking. Backing out of your driveway, if there's a car parked directly across from your driveway, it does make it very challenging. We identified roughly an area for 24 spaces, which would need to be identified by signage that parking is allowed. The spaces identified are not in conflict with driveways. The map also identifies areas for future parking spaces depending on the right-of-way acquisition and the need to reconstruct sidewalks and curb and gutter. And I have a few photos of that from the neighborhood to the north. Town staff with the HOA would need to work on the creation of these parking spaces and identify any future funding. Photos that are attached are the parking areas in neighboring Harmony Landing, which is a newer development that has parking built into the streets, similar to a lot of other developments. If approved, enforcement would not begin until after signage and pavement markings are complete and notification's been given to the residents. And notification from our side would include homeowners and renters, so that no matter how the home is if it's occupied or renters, that everyone's getting notification. This is the map that we created. The orange areas are places where we feel like we could create some parking spots with the appropriate signage markings. The purple areas are areas that ideally, if there were funding, we could, either purchase or be given some extra right-of-way, move the curb over a little bit, move the sidewalk over, and potentially create parking spots that look like these in Harmony Landing. So these are actually built into, this is a new development under construction where there is on-street parking. And you can see the curb jets in, there's parking spots, and the sidewalk. In order to do that in Edgemont Landing, we would need to identify some funding and make that a project priority in some places of those purple areas. The proposed attachment does add Edgemont Landing to the list of subdivisions where there's no on-street parking unless it's in like designated spots. And also the holiday list would be the state holidays instead of neighborhoods having their own holidays, which would be hard to enforce for our local police. I can field any questions that you have. Police Chief Carter is here and as well.
Any questions from the board?
Yeah, I would like to hear from police just about, it sounds like that's a whole lot of what the complaints are about is unsafe driving and safety.
Yes. I know you got the email from Chief Staples. He was unable to attend tonight. You got that through email today and I think a copy at your desk. But he has sent letters to the community and the residents and expressed his concerns tonight as well.
And I guess what I'm looking for, Chief, is just sort of y'all's experiences in the neighborhood as it relates to safety, especially, enforcement opportunities you've been able to make, challenges, whatever you feel like we need to know.
I think I'll give it a shot, and we'll see if I head in the right direction with it. So, yeah, obviously, as Brian mentioned, a lot of this has to do with the design of the streets and the width of the streets, and people trying to create spaces that, quite frankly, don't exist. That does lead to, in some cases, speeding, believe it or not. It also creates a perception of speeding, but most importantly, as I think you heard earlier, is the idea of you have this long row of vehicles parked, and all of a sudden, a child or a bicycle or whatever comes out of nowhere, so there's no opportunity to view those people. The bigger thing on the emergency response side is, quite frankly, as Chief Staples would tell you if he were standing here, is the ability to get the truck in there at a very prompt time, whether it's an ambulance, a fire engine, a ladder truck, or whatever. If you can't get into those areas, cars coming out, there literally is only one. It's almost like a one-way street it becomes. That's a way to look at it. And so now you've got a long stretch of roadway. Everybody's trapped in the middle, and who's going to back up? So this does provide a solution. For us, as Brian hit on, it's very important as we talk to more neighborhoods. Many are doing this at their early stages of the development, and so that's going to help alleviate the problem. But for us, the consistency of enforcement, so we don't have to really kind of stop and think about, we're going here, we're going here. But you also have to think about the non-emergency vehicles in there as well, the utility vehicles, the trash, the public works team that's responding. So all of those contribute to the congestion that's occurring.
Any other questions from the board, comments from the board?
Yeah. I guess I'll just say I was a little bit surprised after our last meeting where I think we had a lot of I walked away thinking that maybe we were heading toward like one side of the road restriction, that we basically got the same thing that we got to begin with, brought back to us. I think that there are a couple different ways to get to where what's being proposed would be comfortable for me. The first would be adding all the parking that's drawn on that map that we've had in front of us. That's a big capital investment that, frankly, I would feel a little bit challenged asking the entire town to pay for in a brand-new development, relatively new. But if that were a conversation, I think that the HOA and residents wanted to have about how we could partner to make some capital improvements to expand on-street parking, sort of as laid out by staff and then that map, I'd love to do that and then lock down other places. I still love the idea, Commissioner Tarnaski mentioned at our last time we talked about this of, odd side of the street or even side of the street so that you can facilitate trash pickup, facilitate through movements, emergency response, but also retain some on-street parking. And I guess the last thing that I'll talk about, just because I don't want to minimize the safety component of what we're talking about, because I do think that there's nothing more important than making sure that kids are safe anywhere in Wendell. And everybody is, especially people that are walking around. We don't want people getting run over by cars. We can all agree that that's a good objective. It is a little bit hard for me to accept, I guess, just philosophically or, think about the idea that clearing cars out of a roadway, opening up the roadway, slows traffic down. To me, that seems like that lets folks feel more comfortable rolling down the road. And I guess that if there were no cars nearby, maybe even if cars were going faster down the street, you'd be able to see someone coming toward the street more clearly. But if the cars move off the road, they're going to end up in the driveway. So then you could think about on a beach, a jetty or something, you've got these new walls of cars, they're just facing a different direction that unfortunately a car driving too fast and a pedestrian acting unsafely or erratically could still conflict in a way that obviously we all want to avoid. So I'm still just not on the convinced that just banning on-street parking is the clear best solution to what I agree seems to be an actual problem. So that's just my 2 cents.
Mayor, if I can
Yeah.
clarify, just staff did evaluate the parking on one side of the street. Brian, can you bring up the map of the development again? And all right. If you look at many of the streets, the sidewalks are offsetting. And on those narrow streets with narrow lots, if you park on one side of the street and you're backing out of your driveway on the other side of the street, you can't back out without creating a conflict with the parking on the other side. That's why staff was only evaluating places that did not have driveways on the other side of the street, so we could look at expanding the right-of-way into those spaces. We felt like there were 24 spaces that we could add just with paint, so it was a quick means to provide some on-street parking in addition to the clubhouse location. But the other ones would require working with the neighborhood to acquire right-of-way and some capital funding to move that. But I just wanted the commissioner to know that staff did evaluate, in this situation, parking on one side and deemed that as an unsafe alternative.
And thank you for that. Two follow-up questions. One, just to make sure I understand, I think you said the sidewalks are offset. You mean the driveways, right?
Driveways, sorry.
That's, I just want to make sure I understand the point. But, I mean, the roads are still, what's the width of the streets from curb to curb?
It's 27 feet back to back, so you've got roughly like 24 feet, 25 feet of pavement.
I mean, I guess in my mind, I don't think anybody should be backing out of their driveway so quickly that they can't turn in 15 to 20 feet. I hear why y'all felt that was maybe not ideal. I think we all are hearing that the design of these streets weren't ideal. So I guess I still, from just a policy perspective and balancing a couple of competing priorities that I think are both legitimate here, so I still think it makes sense to retain
And one
parking
caveat,
on one
so
side of the street.
the HOA covenants does not allow on-street parking currently. So that's the battle, is the HOA and the residents continually, they're fining people, and parking is still happening. So it's not like we're taking away on-street parking. That on-street parking was never supposed to be there according to the HOA covenants. So.
That is new information. I guess I'm confused though about the HOA fines people for parking on public streets.
Yeah, it's an HOA covenant, so they go through a process.
Huh.
That was my,
Mhm.
my question earlier. So I assume that there's a certain number of existing, what I'd call problems, that we're gonna inherit day one when you pass a policy, because that's why we're passing a policy, right? Whatever we're doing through HOA world right now is not working. Does the HOA not have the ability, I mean, I would assume that we're gonna tell you not to do it, tell you not to do it again, put a note on your car, tell you not to do it. And at some point, we'll tell you.
An HOA rep is here if you want to have them talk. Dare who spoke earlier in public comment.
To remind, HOA can't tow from a public street. Once the streets are handed over and accepted by the town, they're public streets, and so that moves away from them. So the fining is the process they follow. We would issue traffic parking tickets with town enforcement. If it's an unsafe situation, we'd do a tow.
So, second question that will help shape my opinion on some of this. I think it would be for Mr. Colley. Is there anything that makes parking enforcement a police function? Do I have to have a sworn law enforcement officer to go cite this vehicle? I mean, maybe to cite them, but do I have to inform them that they're violating a Wendell ordinance?
No.
Okay. One of my overarching problems with and we can get to picking where y'all want to park cars at eventually, of us getting involved in this. By definition, no one's going to be happy when you show up to tell them that they have parked their car in the wrong spot. In time periods where it is an emergency, I would fully expect that if the chief was to pull up and we can't make contact with two vehicles, we're gonna make every effort to make contact with them. And if they're blocking the road, we're gonna have one of those towed. We're gonna correct that situation because they're blocking a public road. And I would imagine we have that authority today, from a policing perspective. I have concerns about, and I listen most evenings to all of, or a good chunk of the radio traffic that day. And I've heard the uptick in our guys being dispatched to Wendell Falls because, and I see it online with folks using the complaint process maybe as a way to get back at the neighbor that got them previously. I am not interested in using sworn law enforcement officers to enforce this on a daily basis. I am for clear rules and enforcing them, but what I would say is I need the person that calls a police officer to trust that police officer when they get there and not think that this is the person that's the meter maid that's out there seeing how long I've been on the curb. I don't know, if in having this conversation, this is a function where we say, yeah, we know that this area is a problem and we have new codes that we want to enforce and we're going to have code enforcement go out and ride through. That might make me, I can understand this from a code enforcement perspective, but it seems to bring a whole nother element into it when not only are we stepping into the middle of what is a HOA issue, and I understand there's some public safety concerns that we're stepping in and we're using law enforcement to do it, and that just seems heavy-handed. But that's my 2 cents.
I'll add that, when you look at the map and you see the orange spaces, the purple spaces, orange spaces, I assume, are minimal cost additions. And then, I'm not sure what the cost would be on
The orange is just signage and paint.
okay, not free, but essentially inexpensive
cost.
to add 24 spaces. I don't know how much 24 spaces moves the needle on folks that are, I guess blatantly parking on the street rather than in their driveway. And I would like to hear from HOA person, but, I think this opens up a discussion and maybe it's for town staff to figure out, you know, the cost of parking enforcement versus construction cost of creating new spaces in a, you know, to Commissioner Eatman's point, this is a development that's relatively new. I don't know that, you know, everybody wants to foot the bill for that. But I think we need, and the same thing happens in Wendell Falls. You know, the calls go out. It is a, you know, reporting, reactive type approach to enforcement. And, you know, I think we just have a larger problem maybe of figuring out what the enforcement piece of it is and the cost of that. So I would encourage, and I guess this is a formal ask on my part, but I would encourage that we check into the
What's gonna happen on
expense for that.
all our subdivisions that have HOAs that they can't enforce, then it's gonna be like it's gonna be like that everywhere in Wendell if we don't put in the parking ahead of time when we pass these developments.
It's not,
I always ask for parking.
it's not a
We're building to
pleasant,
different standard, like, these were built to a different standard. We're building to a different standard today. So what we're building today is not this.
I'm just saying, y'all have HOAs also, but if the future HOAs can't enforce it, like they can't, then what? We'll have the same problem everywhere in Wendell, because we have no parking anywhere, everything we passed.
I think with some of the newer developments, the enforceability challenges will be mitigated by some of the things that we've done differently. I have a question. When you were going through the orange spaces, I'm sure there's a reason, why are none of them on the edges of cul-de-sacs? Because I can see places where maybe you could put one here and there, and I know it might be, oh, there's one on one, okay, but like, right there?
So the
And right
bulb of
here.
the cul-de-sacs are for turnarounds for emergency vehicles and other vehicles. So traditionally, you usually won't see emergency responders encourage parking in cul-de-sacs of any kind. So that's why we avoided those areas.
I'm just trying to get some more spots.
Yeah.
Did the HOA president want to say anything?
And if I could add, just one thing that I think this is for you, but I think would be helpful to hear as sort of you add into whatever else.
Could you give us your name and
Yes, Dare
address?
Robertson, I am the Edgemont Landing HOA president.
Thank you.
Just real quick, as part of, if you can talk a little bit about just sort of y'all's experience with
Sure.
the enforcement piece and
Absolutely.
why doesn't it, just, because that's new to me, I did not know about
Yeah,
that part,
so,
why that doesn't work.
the no on-street parking is not just a rule that the HOA came up with a few years ago. The developer clearly knew that there was not gonna be adequate room to park on the street, so that rule was actually put in place in the governing documents, in the declaration pages by the developer. The developer knew that there was not gonna be room for that. I took over as board president a year and a half ago, and I sit and watch on our Facebook page every single day, people parking, or people saying, hey, let's play a game of Tetris today. Hey, it's Bob and Weave Day. I mean, just tonight, as I was pulling up, somebody sent me a screenshot of somebody saying, this is ridiculous. Is the town going to step in and help? The HOA has done everything we can. So just so you understand our policy, we send 2 to 3 violation letters, which could be anywhere from 3 weeks to a month apart in those dates. So you could be talking about, we've now sent 3 months' worth of letters. Then we invite them to a hearing. They have the opportunity to be heard. They have the opportunity to say, like, hey, here's the situation going on. Can you work with us? If they do not attend the hearing, or if they do attend the hearing and hear from us and we tell them, you know, hey, you've got to stop parking on the street, it is causing congestion, we give them 5 additional days to correct that. That's part of the Planned Community Act that we do follow. On day 6, if they are parking, or any day after day 5 after that hearing, we are allowed to fine them up to $100 a day per the Planned Community Act. We do fine them $50 a day. It is my belief, call me naive if you would like, I've been called worse, Call me naive, but I do believe that if the town does help and that the residents know that, hey, the town is taking over this enforcement, they're not playing around. They know that. It's a request by the HOA to them. A lot of them don't mind being fined $50. We have one resident that we invited him to a second hearing after we fined them quite a bit, and he was like, I just make my roommates pay it. He's like, y'all can fine me all you want. And he parks right in front of a fire hydrant every single day and does not care that he pays $50 a day. So it is a major issue. I do feel like if the town were to step in, and there are residents that are asking for this. I have screenshots of Facebook posts.
Can I pause you there?
Sure.
I'm sorry, just so I can understand. The person that you're speaking of, is that person the homeowner? Or
Yeah.
are they, but they have a roommate, so they,
They have multiple roommates.
okay, so they rent out part of their home that they own to someone else?
I do not know their income stream, whether they live there for free or whether they charge. I do not know.
Okay.
The notices that you send out are based on the address of the house, and then maybe the license, make and model and license plate of the car on a given day that was in front of your house.
Correct.
That
And so
works, okay.
we of course, as of right now, and I realize that if the town does step in and help with this, then some of these rules are gonna change. If it's somebody visiting, right, and they're not parking like a jerk, they're parking in front of the house, they're not parking and blocking somebody else's driveway. We know they're visiting, a family's having a birthday party. That's one thing. The issue is where we have residents who, we are now a 15, 16-year-old community. We have a lot of, we were a lot of young families when we moved in. We all now have drivers, right? So now there's 4 drivers in a household, 5 drivers in a household. People don't want to play car shuffle, so they just park all the vehicles on the street except the 2. Our driveways, including our garage, can fit an average of 6 vehicles.
So people just don't park in the driveway.
We have homeowners that do not park in the driveway, they just park on the street, for whatever reason.
So adding 24 parking spaces is not going to solve that issue.
It will when they know that the town is enforcing it. I do believe that, because we have people asking, when is the town gonna step in and help us? This is getting ridiculous.
And no towing thus far.
Absolutely not. We're not allowed to tow. That's illegal for us to do. The only resource we have is to fine, and that's what we do.
Liens on properties?
We do have a collection policy. We do have a fine policy where we can put liens and intent to liens on properties. Yes, sir.
So you're in need of enforcement, not necessarily these orange spaces.
Both.
I mean, the orange
We-
spaces might help.
They-
because it
they
gives
will.
people an alternative, but
They will significantly help with,
they have their driveways.
when you have somebody having a family birthday party and they have, 6 or 7 additional vehicles.
Day-to-day living.
Day-to-day living, I think that some of our residents, and I guess me personally, I would choose to not call this guest parking. I would choose to call this additional parking. And as an HOA board representative, I'm not enforcing who's parking in there. If you live there and you park there, I'm not enforcing that. I'm not gonna ride around and enforce whether you're a guest or you're a homeowner. I do think those additional parking, though, will help.
So I guess this is a staff question, but do y'all feel like currently the town has the authority and whatever you need to be able to tow vehicles, like aggressively tow vehicles that are parked blocking fire hydrants, blocking the flow of traffic on a street, or blocking someone's driveway? Because those are 3 things that don't sound those are like the most egregious examples of what I've heard, and I don't think that we have to ban on-street parking for you to be able to fix those 3 problems.
Okay, so the normal process for a fire hydrant would be actually a citation and not it would be a state citation as an option.
Ticket.
A ticket. Mhm. We tow only if it is blocking the lane of travel, and that becomes very difficult to identify on streets that don't really truly have any marks. It's a judgment call. If that vehicle's sitting far enough off the curb. And the third one, you're
Blocking people's driveways.
blocking people's driveway. The current parking ordinances do prohibit that, but that would be a ticketable fine, not a tow.
Um, I'm looking for an opportunity to give a little bit, because, I mean, I sort of made it clear where I'm at on the basic proposal. I'd be happy to say you can't park. I mean, I think that somebody ought to get towed if they're parked in front of a fire hydrant. I think somebody ought to get towed if they're blocking someone else's driveway. And I think that somebody ought to get towed if they're parked more than some distance from the curb. And I've probably parked farther away from a curb than I should, but on a tiny little street, it's probably less than a foot that you should be away from the curb, or less, or less. And so I'd be happy to support any of that we would need to do to any adjustments to our parking ordinances that would empower y'all to do that. I still just don't think that a total ban is the fix that I would prefer.
I have just a couple thoughts. To me, I probably am the other end of the extreme from Commissioner Eatman, is that street parking just eats at my core. And it does because of the same reason that people leave their shopping buggies in parking spaces. It's just like, it's a sign of just being courteous to your neighbors. Pulling into your driveway, like Ms. Robertson said, most homes can fit 6. I know in my neighborhood, there's usually 2 cars backed out of the garage, or the driveway garage. And so people choose not to do it because they can, and because they don't want to let their car shuffle, or they want to move the cars around. And that's something that any household can do, that they if they need to. I know as growing up as a kid, we had to do that at our house, so it's part of the game. So to me, anything that the HOA can do on their end to discourage this, it sounds like they're doing that. And that was what my first ask would be. I think putting the orange spaces there with some paint seems like an easy first step. I have no problem, banning on-street parking. As a town, we have other parking policies right now that are just suggestions, and so if we're going to do this, it would need to be enforced. And I also, like Commissioner Jordan, I don't love the idea of policemen sitting out there writing tickets when they could be doing other things too. That doesn't seem like a good use of the resources. But I'd also, on the same note, the safety issue is something that truly bothers me, and knowing how people, whether it's a perception or it's a real thing that's happening, people going to the streets, moving, that they'll stay somewhat their same speed, kind of getting from point A to point B. A ball, a kid, a bike, someone goes out in the street, heck, a dog. I mean, any pet, anything like that at all, gets out in the street, that's an issue. And so, to me, anything we can do to get people to assigned spaces would be beneficial. Anything we can do as a town, short-term, long-term, to help to discourage this, to get people thinking in a different way of, maybe I can park in my driveway, maybe we can do the little car shuffle in the morning. Maybe it's just, hey, it's not a big deal for us to park. We can move the garage, we can do other things. I think just getting people to think that pathway would be a good first step for us to take. So that's where I stand on the policy. Anything we can do to help out and keep things safe, I'm all for at this point in the ballgame.
Anyone else?
I'll just speak from personal experience with 4 drivers, children, 2 adults, a golf cart, and not a driveway that would fit 4 cars. We did the shuffle routine for a long time. And I know there's spaces here, the community center, that kind of thing. But it seems like it's just gotten to a point where it's blatant disregard for what's going on. I'm all for making, a step in the right direction, and, let's create the orange spaces. Let's actively tow the egregious offenders. And, I really think that a step in the direction of the town is trying to help with this problem. I think a tow truck riding around in the neighborhood makes a big difference, and that lights up the neighborhood page I'm a member of more than anything else. Weeds, dogs, whatever. Tow truck riding through the neighborhood generates more chatter than even the lights flickering when the power goes out. I think that is a step in the right direction. But again, not being there, not knowing what percentage of those people are those offenders. But I think that shows that the town is trying to be involved without taking the whole ball of wax.
When our boys were growing up, we had 4 cars. When we did a shuffle, we all knew where our spot was. If you got there sooner than the person in front of you or something, we had to rearrange them at the end of the day so that who left first could get out. It's just life. It's just life. We didn't block anybody's driveway or anything like that. That's, yeah, go ahead.
So one of the things that we have seen is get posted is, well, I called the town, or I called Wendell PD, or I called Wendell Fire, and Wendell Fire said it's a public road and I can park where I want, so the HOA can't tell me what I'm doing. And so we're trying to educate as well and say, you know, we understand it's a public road. You know, law enforcement doesn't care where you park, but the HOA does because this is part of our governing document. So there's really kind of this, we're not all on the same page, and that's what we're hoping is that if we're all on the same page and we're all sending the same message and we're all giving the same education, it's going to be significantly helpful. And I agree with you. A tow truck riding around, that Facebook page, I'm not approving posts that day.
Protective covenants versus restrictive covenants is where I am on that, you know, and that's the hard part of educating people. It's meant to basically protect you from yourself because you're going to do what you're going to do regardless, but.
All right, anyone else? Any comments, thoughts?
Well, I know we've done a lot of talking, but I think as it's written, I don't know that I'm on board with it. Some version of it, yes. You know, if it's something we need to decide tonight, certainly we can, but, you know, if it's something we need to push the next meeting until we figure out what the common ground is, that's fine too, but.
I'm glad to report back to the board based on what staff heard tonight, what we can enforce and what we're not able to enforce based on the complaints provided and the enforcement techniques suggested. I can derive cost estimate for the painting and signage of the 24 spaces. There is a limit to what the town can do. Blocking a driveway doesn't always mean parking right like on someone's driveway. I believe she's talking about parking on the other side of the street from the driveway, which may or may not be a legal issue, to Dean's point about being able to pull out or not. If there's other cars parked in front of your house and that house also, it's more challenging with cars on both sides of the street, as witnessed by staff when we were riding. But let me huddle back with staff, take the policy guidance and value statements that we heard and see if we can just report back to the board before an ordinance draft is brought back again on what we can and can't do and what costs are.
I mean, it's a multi-year issue. I don't know that, you know, I'm always let's get it right. So if it's a couple weeks, I'm assuming that's agreeable, but I want to do something, but I don't want to sit here and say, we're going to do this, and then, you know, we can't do half of it. So,
there are things that law enforcement can do this coming week. Speed enforcement, definitely from what's being heard. Proactively look for people parking in front of fire hydrants and ticketing those vehicles. Any kind of unsafe movement or motion, and make sure that it's on a frequently traveled route by officers on patrol.
I have particular concern when y'all are huddling about the ability for emergency vehicles to get through. I know you can call a tow truck and get it moved, but if someone needs an ambulance, they don't have time to wait for Lizard Lick Towing to come. They need to get through
The,
right that moment, you know.
the solution is get the cars off the street. Don't allow parking on the narrow streets. That was the staff recommendation.
So just, and I appreciate it, and it is a very, because it is true, that it is difficult to get an emergency vehicle. It is not impossible to get an emergency vehicle through. And even with one on either side of that road, I have no doubt Wendell can put an engine between it. Now, there's pictures that Dare showed where, no, absolutely, but that's the road being blocked. That's not, and so that, I think that's the difference, right? Like, I backed all the way, when someone asked earlier about a cul-de-sac, and I remember Mackinac Island Road in South Raleigh, but I backed all the way down because someone had parked in the cul-de-sac, and we were 2 houses from the end, and I back an ambulance 450, 500 feet back down the street because there was nowhere to really tightly turn. So I appreciate it. There's got to be a...
Chief, can you come to the stand for a second? I just want to clarify something. If two cars are parked across the street from each other and there's not a sufficient travel lane, shouldn't the officer be able to ticket that for depriving a lane of traffic? We'll talk about it this week. Look into it, please.
And I'll give you the quick policy piece for the one part of the board that I am. I think you should be as aggressive on that as you possibly can be. I think you should be as aggressive on reckless drive. I know that it's hard for somebody to speed anywhere in town because you got to go. If you want to ticket them at all, they got to be over 35, which is hard in a subdivision, much less 5 or 10 over for it to really matter. And reckless driving's a thing too, I think. So, I mean, those are two places where I think, from a policy perspective, not to, you know, the job all day, every day, I don't. But I hope you feel like, for the one part of the board that I am, and maybe other people will nod, that you and the manager have our support to be aggressive on those two particular enforcement opportunities to hopefully address, I think, a big chunk or maybe the most egregious portions of what we're hearing about in Edgemont Landon and probably other places in town too.
Heard the direction.
So everybody have what they need? Did you want to speak?
I want to add, when whatever policy comes back to us eventually, my largest concern is that this becomes a thing that we do everywhere. So if there's thoughts on how we limit this to these communities. I see that these two communities, I also see this as like Pandora's box, and once we open it, so understanding how we don't end up doing this for every community where, and I appreciate there's folks that are concerned, this has been noticed, this is on an agenda. There's not anyone besides Ms. Robertson here. I'll leave it at that. I feel like we can get a little bit. Certainly don't have a problem banning on-street parking, certainly agree broadly. But I agree with let's take a limited approach and let's find a way that if we're gonna do a larger policy change, we know that this isn't something we're coming back every couple months with a new subdivision that wants to be added into our parking police.
Something workable townwide. Okay. And those people who are not here tonight that have an opinion contrary to that, we welcome you to come and tell us what it is.
Can I ask one last, I promise, technical question? In the actual draft ordinance that we have tonight, you listed out 3 particular subsections of ordinance 24-90, including one about electric vehicle parking. I just didn't understand the formatting, I guess, of what that's.
The renumbering, so it has nothing to do with that section. There's the renumbering. We renumbered things. So when Wendell Falls got put in there, it was just thrown in the middle of the section. And so we renumbered and reorganized the sections. It's probably best not to look at the screen, but look at what's in your attachments, because that's got the blue line markouts. But also then put the holiday section in there.
left that the town manager would allow community-wide resident events permitted with prior approval.
I see.
And then the holidays, making them from the state of North Carolina instead of the HOA. What we don't want is 2 HOAs or 20 HOAs all giving us a different list of holidays that the police have to enforce. That's not a good way to do that, so.
Thing is, if there's no parking any other time, how can you do it on even a holiday for emergencies? It's just crazy. I don't get.
Current policy allows Wendell Falls
Yeah.
to have those days.
But still,
Per
there's no
the-
parking all year round. There should be a reason why you can't have it then also, but anyway, I'm just curious.
Thank you, Brian.
How you can do it sometime and other times you can't, so, anyway.
All right, thank you. All right, let's move to item 6D, is the approval for the Wendell Brownfield Program Task Order 03, Community Outreach, Task Order 04, Brownfield Inventory, and Task Order 05, Phase 1, Generic Scope of Services and Cost Proposal Agreements between Geosyntec and the Town of Wendell.
Thank you, and good evening again. Just briefly, these are the third, fourth, and fifth task orders associated with our master service agreement with Geosyntec to provide brownfield grant administration. They are busy at work on task orders 1 and 2 that were previously approved. Before you this evening, task order 3 provides for community outreach efforts, creating web content for the town's website and social media accounts, create a community improvement plan, which will specify community involvement and to address community needs, concerns, and expectations, and lay out a strategy for meaningful community involvement. Task order 3 is budgeted for a not-to-exceed amount of $17,645. What they've found in the past working with other grantees is that every community is different, and certainly as you begin a grant and a program rollout, the community outreach efforts are different than at the end when you have actual projects to talk about. So first is education on what brownfields are, what we can do about them, and how the town is being involved in that process. And then as it moves towards more specific projects, it's, hey, we'd like to be involved in this transaction or this potential proposal. There's lots of various ways that they can, message all of that stuff out. And they have indicated that they would like to attend some of our community events like the market or the Harvest Festival or Wendell Wonderland, so that they can answer questions in that sort of format too. They've been very accommodating with sort of our small town charm. Task Order 4 will provide support for the creation of a brownfields inventory for the grant's target area, beginning with the priority sites identified in the Brownfield Assessment Grant application. The target area for the grant, for our purposes, is a 1-mile radius from downtown. The priority sites identified in the Brownfield Assessment Grant application are the Pleasant Grove Community Redevelopment Project and the West 4th Street block. This work will be done in conjunction with staff, citizen advisory groups, and local landowners and stakeholders. Task Order 4 is budgeted for a not-to-exceed amount of $19,351. So essentially, that money is used to create a list or inventory of all the brownfield sites in our target area. And then as we work through them, we create a priority list for how to start and where to go after we've moved on from the priority sites. Task Order 5 provides for a generic proposal for Phase 1 environmental assessments of properties that identifies a scope of services and not to exceed amount of $5,650 per assessment. This is different than the previous task orders in that dollar amount is not the cap on the spending. That's the cap on the spending per assessment, as it says. A Phase 1 is a first step assessment in every single brownfields project. It's a sort of narrative history of contamination or potential contamination. They're required by the EPA, have to be approved, and you have to do one before you can move on to a Phase 2 if that's even necessary. They'll be performed on sites identified in the inventory in Task Order 4, according to the prioritization efforts and with property owner consent and involvement for sure. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have about the Brownfield program or Task Orders 3, 4, or 5.
Okay, any questions from the board?
Madam Mayor, I move we approve the task orders and authorize the town manager as designated to sign same.
All right, we have have a motion to approve the task orders and authorize the town manager or his designee to sign them. Is there any discussion on the motion? All in favor, raise your hand. Okay. Thank you. All right, we'll move into our other business. First, Capital Area Metropolitan Planning Organization, Commissioner Eatman.
Thank you, Mayor. We had a Campo board meeting last week, covered a lot of good ground, including bus plan update, which includes additional bus service from Wendell to Raleigh, so that's exciting. Campo, so that's, the transportation planning for the Triangle region. The boundaries of Campo are growing post-2020 census. Additional areas in Harnett County, Chatham County, and Johnston County are going to be included as part of the organization. Particularly excited about additional opportunities to coordinate with our neighbors in Johnston County, just here adjacent to the town limits. And then there was something else that was really exciting that I know I was going to tell you all about. We started talking about the new prioritization. There's a 2-year process cycle for prioritization of transportation projects that DOT conducts. The next one of those is firing up. They've kind of gone through a couple, we've missed a round or two because of COVID and other sort of getting off track, but getting back on track with another round of project prioritization. Looking forward to being part of that process for the first time.
All right, Triangle J, Council of Governments, Commissioner Deloach. We need to change the name of that on here.
Central Pines Regional Council. Actually, I did not attend, Mayor. I had a family matter that obviously I was attending to, and I have asked for the minutes from that meeting, and I will report back once I get that.
Perfect. Let's move to our commissioners' reports. Start with Commissioner Joyner.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It is the first day of school for a lot of kids in Wendell today. As we've discussed multiple times tonight, keep your eyes out for kids as you're driving over the next couple days. We will always keep your eyes out for kids while you're driving. You should put extra emphasis on it because people are going back to school. I forgot the other thing, Madam Mayor.
Just one thing, I appreciate Ms. Robertson coming tonight. I know she just left, but I felt like as a town board, that's one thing we haven't got to do a lot is to deal with a group of people and kind of work through problems, talk through problems. And so I feel like in some ways we just kind of sometimes lay policy out and move along. And it's nice to have somebody here who's bringing a concern to us that we're kind of talking through. So, but I do agree with Commissioner Deloach. Obviously, this is it's a problem. It's an issue. We need to make sure we address it, but doing it correctly and doing it in a way that, like you said, it works well for not just her neighborhood, but other neighborhoods, and I think enforcement, I think the long term is going to be the tough spot on it too. But
Commissioner Eatman.
I'm confident that the other thing Commissioner Joyner was trying to think of, in addition to watching for kids as you drive around town, is slow down as you drive around town. It really doesn't matter who you are, where you're at, how you're driving. You will be benefited, and so will the rest of us if you will just slow down a little bit.
Commissioner Tornaski.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners in the town of Wendell. I'm looking forward to talking with all the commissioners, and from this point forward, for all the new developments, work on getting extra parking so we don't have this problem in the future. That's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Commissioner Deloach.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm going to say that Commissioner Joyner wanted to mention baseball. That would probably be my guess, because he's a baseball guy, too. I've had actually 2 separate conversations today about scheduling information sessions regarding the bond. So, obviously, we had information on that tonight, as well as a handful of previous meetings. It's coming soon, and I hope that you will take the time to inform yourself, to reach out for information. I'm sure anybody here will be happy to discuss it. If your civic organization is in need of a speaker, this will be an excellent time to inform groups of folks. So reach out to us if that's a thing. But again, 2 conversations today, and I'm assuming we'll have a handful more, and we're going to get started on that here pretty soon. I will briefly mention baseball training facility. For me, It's a big thing. I grew up in Greenville. Greenville is now considered basically the home of BMX. I'm not saying that that Wendell's going to be the home of Major League Baseball players, but I think that, having a state-of-the-art pitching lab, training facility, it is a big deal. It's a big deal for our town. It's a big deal for the youth here, for our baseball program, and, the mayor even mentioned scholarship opportunities. I mean, this is a local guy that's committed to making our area better, the game of baseball better, and again, not going forever, but we've run really late tonight, so that's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you. I have a couple things. A quick reminder, next week, the Wendell Market starts on Thursday the 7th at 6. It's gotten so big and popular and wonderful. It's on Campen and Depot now, so we'd love for you to come out and take a look and bring your family. It should be a nice night. I was also going to remind everybody that traditional school calendars started back school today, so please slow down. Don't pass school buses. I feel like I shouldn't have to say that, but you hear about it all the time, so I'm going to say it. Please don't pass the school bus. When the lights are red, you're supposed to stop. Don't pass the school bus. And then I have two things I want to tell you about. The first one's funny and a little self-deprecating, but I'm going to tell you anyhow. I went to Carver Elementary School last Friday to speak to the 3rd grade about being a mayor. And they invite me every year, and I go every year, and I take them pencils and bookmarks and things like that, and they love it, and I talk to them about it a little bit. It's a civics lesson, and it falls within their curriculum, and I do it at several schools. And anyhow, then at the end, we get to ask questions, and every time I always like to bring the funniest question and bring to y'all. And the questions, the children were bright and smart and well-mannered, and they raised their hands, and they said, yes, ma'am, and no, ma'am, to me. They were very well-mannered, very nice young men and women. I could tell they're all going to do a lot of great things and going to be leaders, but one of them was a little politician, because he said, one of the questions, he asked me how old I was. And so I told him, I don't care, and he looked right at me right in front of everybody, and he said, well, you look 27. So that's why I go to the schools, if anybody wants to know. So I did do that, and that was fun, and they were cute. I also wanted to tell you that today I delivered a proclamation for a 100th birthday celebration to a Wendell resident, and her name is Miss Mary Frances Montague, and her birthday is today, and she's 100 years old today. And she is currently living in Wellington in Nightdale, but she's in Wendell a lot, and she still attends church at Pleasant Grove Baptist Church, and I saw her there and all of her church family and her other family and friends, and it was a really nice day. And I want to tell you a little bit about her. She went to Fayetteville State University and apparently made fantastic grades. They all talked about what a bright student she was, and she went into education, and she taught elementary school for 35 years. When she retired from teaching, she continued to be involved in her community and did all kinds of tutoring and things like that with kids, and tried to help students and things through her church and stuff like that. And they wanted me to say her birthday is a celebration. Her birthday celebration is a testament to the countless lives she's touched and the admiration and love she earned throughout her life's journey. And I can see that because I read her proclamation, and she just was absolutely charming. And she said, go get a chair and come sit by me. And so I got a chair and sat beside her, and she just told me, she just entertained me for like 45 minutes. And I had a ball, and we had lunch, and we had birthday cake. And it's been one of the nicest days I've had as mayor, was to get to go to her birthday party. So happy birthday again today, Miss Mary Frances. I hope you've had a wonderful day. And on behalf of the town of Wendell, we wish you the happiest happy birthday today. All right, are we going to a closed session?
But wait, there's more. Madam Mayor, I move we go into closed session, reference North Carolina General Statute 143, 31811A, number 3, to consult with the attorney employed or retained by the public body in order to preserve attorney-client privilege.
Okay, so we're going to go into closed session. Very briefly.
I used to just go to 3 and I wouldn't. I first got on board, I knew what each of the three except, like what the.
That's the agenda item. I don't think you get to vote. It's just there.
That's a nay from over here.
Yeah.
We've been here long enough.
We have had a long night. Yeah, let's